Who are they?
For those who are keen on Palestinian leadership emerging in full force, we need to do our part to do no harm, which means arms embargo, which means an end of aid, which means allowing international norms, and at least give the chance of a popular Palestinian leadership to emerge. To imagine that Palestinians are able to rebuild in a moment where children are still being blown up because, they're in unexploded landmines that have been left across Gaza, where are there no hospitals, schools, or even homes to get shelter in. It really is insensitive not to prioritize accountability for ourselves for causing this destruction in order to rebuild, in order to give a people a chance who are probably deeply traumatized. 17,000 Palestinians have been orphaned, and many of them have been pulled from the rubble with no limbs and no surviving family. We worry in the West when somebody witnesses a car accident, right, or sees someone die in front of them and the trauma, and they get therapy and they have support. We're literally expecting a people to emerge from genocide to build a political future without addressing that they are humans. They are enduring emotional trauma and still unable to survive. They've proposed a one-state solution, a two-state solution, a binational federation. Palestinians need to lead themselves. We need to let them live first.
I would like to end on hope. Something hopeful. You said you're an optimist. What, if anything, gives you hope moving forward?
The greatest amount of hope that I've been able to conjure, is watching Palestinians make something out of nothing. Listening to Palestinian, new mothers who have created life in the midst of the genocide when life is the primary target, or witnessing the young man on, Instagram who doesn't have access to a gym, so is now making makeshift weights out of water bottles. The only thing I can say that's good about the ceasefire is that it gives Palestinians an opportunity to sleep and to eat. And if they are able to sleep and to eat, they are able to continue moving forward to craft a vision for their own freedom. And so how can you not have hope? And especially for me as a Palestinian, when I think to myself, I come from these people. I am part of this lineage. We create from nothing. We practice love. We teach life. How can I not have hope? And so, I encourage people who lose hope to turn to Palestinians, because they will teach you quite a bit and help you strengthen that muscle of hope.
Thank you for listening to the interview from the BBC World Service. You'll find more in-depth conversations on the interview wherever you get your BBC podcasts, including episodes with released Israeli hostage Keith Siegel, author Sir Salman Rushdie, and former US Vice President Kamala Harris. Until the next time, bye for now.
From the BBC, that was the interview.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC. Thanks for joining us. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. So welcome to Tuesday morning. Some early notes here. We do have Highway 1 at Falcon Lake that is now closed. There's a detour there. It's in effect on Highway 11 eastbound lanes and Highway 44 west. This is because of a motor vehicle collision. So I'm just noting that right off the top. It's 3 minutes to 6 o'clock. If you have issues in traffic through the morning, you're going to call Corey Funk, 788-3093. That's the commuter line. Corey also directs the show. Morning, Corey. Let's say good morning to Mr. Abby Adiyemi behind our controls, our senior tech on the show. Abby also will be covering the forecasts. And Mr. Darren Marash. Good morning, Darren. Darren is our YouTube producer, so you can watch the show there. Well, speaking of weather, today increasing cloud in Winnipeg early this morning, and our high is going to be right around 4 degrees. Let's go to Heather Wells for a live news update at 3 minutes to 6.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba is looking to end the use of sick notes in many cases. Right now, there is no provincial law, but a government source says the NDP government wants to ban employers from demanding sick notes unless their employee has been gone from work for 7 calendar days. The proposed legislation is expected to be mentioned in today's speech from the throne. Doctors Manitoba is thrilled with that plan. And private security guards are patrolling the streets of Steinbach Steinbach. A pilot project with Steinbach Security Services has been extended by that city council. Housing developers asked the city for help dealing with theft and vandalism at construction sites. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Hey, little bird, places we will go. Salt flats of Saskatchewan in June, they look like snow.
So unusual for us to play music to you this early, but we're playing it because this musician's going to be in studio right after 6 o'clock, and we're going to hear her story about her health condition and how it took her off stage, and now she got so much support from the community that she's giving back. So stay tuned. We'll have that story coming up right here on CBC. Also, when snowbirds don't fly, when they stay home, Americans notice. We're going to talk to CBC's Julia Wong this morning. She went down to Florida to see firsthand the impact of Canadians avoiding the States. Stay with us. Lots still ahead, but World Report is first at 6.
On cue, Robert Plant spent years as the lead singer of the legendary rock band Led Zeppelin, but after decades touring as a solo artist, he swore he would never step into a recording studio again. Now Robert Plant is back with a new album. You'll hear him talk about the band that got him back into the studio.
Q with Tom Power, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Canadians will not be going into another election. Prime Minister Mark Carney's minority Liberals will continue to govern. Their budget passed the House of Commons, but it required a handful of abstentions from some key NDP and Conservative MPs. Janice McGregor is in our Parliamentary Bureau. Janice, the Liberals live to fight another day. What now?
Marcia, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne is out immediately today with his next flex. The legislation to actually implement the measures in this budget has been put on notice, meaning we'll soon get to tuck into its actual policy and monetary substance, something that's been, frankly, somewhat overshadowed. Now, that legislation means more confidence votes. But the way this first stare down ended could be instructive because multiple parties blinked here. 2 weeks ago, Elizabeth May was theatrically throwing her budget book onto the floor to denounce its climate measures. By yesterday, a few words of assurance from the Prime Minister in question period, enough for her to vote in favor. And both the New Democrats and the Conservatives held back, with 2 MPs abstaining. That means neither can blame the other for propping up the government. Anyone that's watching only Pierre Poilievre's social media saw no acknowledgement of this in his messages to his followers about why most Conservatives voted no on a budget that they insist remains unaffordable. But what opposition parties also couldn't afford was another election.
What does the way this unfolded tell you about how things will play out in the House between now and the winter break?
Well, today, for example, the House of Commons is debating bail reform legislation. These are changes premiers, mayors, as well as the opposition have all demanded. The opposition has a competing private member's bill of its own that calls for similar action. After enabling the Liberals to keep governing, is there an openness, at least on this bill, for a compromise to deal with what's a shared public safety concern if we aren't going to plunge into another election? Will MPs use this time to make progress, or are bad feelings running too hot to collaborate just now?
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. Sweden's King Carl Gustaf and Queen Sylvia will be formally welcomed to Canada in just a few hours. They are leading a delegation of Swedish businesses on a charm offensive, including the firm Saab. It's trying to convince the Canadian government to order fewer F-35 fighter jets from the United States and instead buy its Gripen E fighter jets. Saab is promising it will create thousands of jobs in Canada. But our colleagues at Radio-Canada have learned a dozen former high-ranking officers have written a letter defending the American-made jets. Here is former Chief of the Defense Staff, Tom Lawson.
There just is nothing available in the free world that comes close to the quality of the F-35. The F-35 is the only aircraft that provides a way ahead with the operational capabilities that will make it viable for decades to come.
The letter has not been made public yet, and Lawson would not confirm reports that say he signed it. But it was apparently sent to key decision makers yesterday, including Prime Minister Mark Carney. The Jeffrey Epstein files will be front and center today in Washington. The U.S. House of Representatives is expected to vote on the full release of the Epstein files, and it's now being backed by the U.S. president. After dismissing the information in the files for months, Donald Trump says Republicans should vote in favor of making the information public. The CBC's Willie Lowry joins me now from Washington. Willie, what are we expecting today?
So we expect the House to vote in favor of compelling the Justice Department to release the Epstein files. Even though Republicans hold a slim majority, the fact that this has been a bipartisan effort led by Republican Thomas Massie and Democrat Ro Khanna suggests the numbers are there. Those two politicians are also expected to hold a press conference outside the Capitol building this morning alongside several victims of Jeffrey Epstein. President Donald Trump's reversal over the weekend, suddenly supporting the release of these files, is another indication that the House will likely vote in favor of the release. But don't expect to see the files anytime soon. This is just the first of several steps that need to take place before a release of documents.
So if it gets passed today, what's next?
It would be up to the Senate to even decide if it wants to vote on the bill. It's under no obligation, and so far Senate Majority Leader John Thune has been mum on the issue. John Barrasso, the second highest-ranking Republican in the Senate, indicated that they would at least look at the bill.
The House is going to vote, try to make a decision, and we'll see if they send something to the Senate. And if they do, we'll take a look at that. But we want transparency and accountability.
If the Senate votes on the bill and it passes, it's then up to Trump to sign off on it. And then, finally, the Department of Justice would be compelled to release the files. There is another way. Trump could circumvent all these votes and simply order the Attorney General to release the documents.
Thank you, Willie.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Willie Lowry in Washington. The United Nations Security Council is backing Donald Trump's plan for Gaza. The blueprint put forward by the U.S. president paves the way for a possible sovereign Palestinian state and an international stabilization force. But as the CBC's Tom Perry reports, both Israel and Hamas are already raising objections.
The draft resolution has been adopted.
The UN Security Council endorsed Donald Trump's plan for Gaza, with America's two main rivals, Russia and China, abstaining. Mike Waltz, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, called the vote a significant step toward a peaceful and prosperous Gaza.
This resolution today is just the beginning. An adoption of resolution today demonstrates the overwhelming support for the president's vision.
But critics say that vision is unclear. Both Russia and China have pointed out there remain big questions around Trump's plan for a board of peace, with him as chair, to oversee a transitional government in Gaza, and around Trump's proposal for an international stabilization force to work with Palestinian police to provide security in the territory. Hamas, which still controls Gaza, is supposed to disarm under the peace plan and play no role in any future government. The group has rejected the UN resolution and its calls for an international force to patrol the territory. Israel, meanwhile, has raised concerns about the resolution's mention of a potential pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood. With Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu repeating his government's position, it stands firmly against any plan to establish a Palestinian state. Tom Perry, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Japan is warning its citizens in China to be cautious and avoid crowded places. The rift between the two countries continues to grow. That is after Japan's prime minister suggested a Chinese attack on Taiwan could trigger a military response from Tokyo. A Chinese diplomat responded with a threat. The Japanese embassy is telling its citizens to be careful of their interactions with Chinese people. It is also urging them not to travel alone. It may not be winter yet, but snowbird season is beginning. This is the time of year many Canadians consider heading south of the border to escape the cold. But as Julia Wong reports, it appears fewer people are making the trip this year.
It was just gorgeous. I just loved to see the boats, and it was just a beautiful lifestyle.
For 10 years, retiree Joanne Rowe spent her winters in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. But after tariff tensions and annexation threats from U.S. President Donald Trump,
that's when I thought, I'm getting out of here.
This year, she will go to Mexico instead. Canadian snowbirds normally flock to the Sunshine State, but the most recent Florida tourism figures show a 20% drop from the same time last year, ruffling feathers over how the lucrative snowbird season will go.
We really, really welcome the Canadians back with open arms. We want them back.
At the Beachside Atlantic Hotel and Spa, sales director Amy Faulkner laments their loss. Canadian occupancy at the hotel is down 5% since the start of 2025, hurting the hotel's bottom line.
Because they spend money when they come here, especially in a hotel, room service, dining on the beach, and all of that adds up very quickly, and we miss it so very much.
That sentiment echoed by Hollywood, Florida Mayor Josh Levy, who says more than 500,000 jobs in the state depend on Canadian snowbirds.
We see our Canadian visitors at our grocery stores and in restaurants and just contributing to the local economy. So
an economic relationship the mayor and Florida businesses hope withstand the prevailing winds of politics. Julia Wong, CBC News, Hollywood, Florida.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report News Anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and you're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. Tuesday morning, November the 18th, and it's going to be pretty nice today. Once again, a little warmer even than yesterday. We do have an update on something that's happened on the highways early this morning. Corey is in to let us know about that in just a moment, so we'll have the very latest. This hour on the program, a health condition took a Winnipeg folk singer off the stage, but now after a lot of support from our community, she's about to step back on. We're going to hear her story to start Information Radio. Also, when snowbirds stay home, Americans notice, as you've been hearing in World Report this morning, CBC's Julia Wong went down to Florida to check out the impact firsthand of Canadians avoiding the U.S. And you might recall some interviews here on Information Radio with Manitobans who've sold their places down south. It's a tough decision. It's a big investment. So why are Canadians choosing to do so? We'll hear more from that side of the border, the state side. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells. She is here with our news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, doctors are sick of writing sick notes, and the Manitoba government is listening. The province wants to eliminate mandatory sick notes for short-term absences from work. It could only be requested after a worker's been off for 7 calendar days. A source tells CBC the government is going to tease this bill in today's throne speech. Trauma counselors are heading to God's Lake Narrows as that community grapples with a fatal incident over the weekend. A 20-year-old man died early Sunday morning after drinking a mysterious liquid. He wasn't the only one. 2 boys, 15 and 17, who also drank it, were flown to hospital in Winnipeg. We're going to hear the latest coming up, and along with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Abby, how are things looking in the weather forecast?
Well, the province will be seeing that gentle push of warmer air with most of the areas trending to see cloudier skies by midday. The south will stay mainly dry, while up north we're seeing light snow and freezing drizzle at this time. Winnipeg, we are at -4, heading to +4.
Abby Adeyemi with us through the morning with weather. Corey, I mentioned a traffic update, Corey Funkin, and this is about the highway, right?
Yeah, so early this morning, Highway 1 right around Falcon Lake was closed due to a motor vehicle accident, but it is now open. So should be able to move through Highway 1 around Falcon Lake. Shouldn't be a problem anymore. Otherwise, seems like a fairly smooth commute so far. But if you see something going on, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Well, Well, up first, as I alluded to, folk artist Emma Cloney gets to take the stage back this week. After being diagnosed with lipedema, she had to step away. But the arts community rallied to raise money for her health care back in 2023. And now she's well enough to give back herself with a free concert tomorrow at the West End Cultural Centre. Emma Cloney is with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
And also with us, Dale Brown. Good morning.
Good morning.
They are the New Customs. We will play some music momentarily, but first we wanted to update your story. How are you doing now with this lipedema? How's your health?
My health is good. I live with a chronic illness, so obviously there's the up days and the down days, but I can happily tell you that the majority of my days are up and capable, and I've received the treatment that I needed in order to get my life back, which is amazing.
What does that feel like? After, years off stage and right about now to step back on?
It's really liberating, and I gotta say that I never really doubted that I would get it back. Just that sense of determination when I found out that an illness that has no cure actually has really effective treatment. Accessing that treatment was really hard, but I always just knew that somehow we'd figure it out. And now to live in a place where the first thing I think about isn't how much it hurts or how much I can't do. And instead, everything just feels kind of limitless, and I'm using my body and my brain for amazing things every day. So honestly, I feel really good about it.
I'll ask you in a moment to tell us more about lipedema, because you've not only learned about it, lived with it, but you've been fighting for awareness around it as well. But I want to ask you, Dale, how does it feel getting ready for her to be back on stage?
Oh, it's always wonderful playing music together and being able to share what we do. It's so exciting to be back to the West End Cultural Centre. It's where this all began for us almost 10 years ago. And it's always a pleasure to play that room.
What was it like for you when she became ill?
It's really, really hard to see anyone you care about or anyone you love having to go through, any hardship, especially something that you can't put yourself in that position. And so you stand by the people you love, and you just do what you have to do.
Yeah. You're her partner in music, but of course you're also her husband.
Yes.
I don't think I said that out loud in the mic here. What is lipedema then?
So lipedema is a genetically acquired connective tissue disorder, and basically what it is, it's not a pretty disorder. It causes fat that is not to be able to be lost by diet or exercise. That's incredibly painful to build up on the limbs. So usually from about the belly button down to the ankles, and depending on what type you have, it can also grow from the shoulders to the arms. And it affects almost exclusively women. It's debilitatingly painful. There's nothing that anyone did to cause it or make theirs worse. And it can be triggered at times of hormonal change. So puberty, pregnancy, menopause, and major stressful life events. And for me, I'd been living with it for a very long time, probably since puberty, but I didn't know. I had weight I couldn't lose. I mean, when you work in the arts and you're in the public eye, body image is really important. And I had done everything that there was to do. You couldn't run further. You couldn't, eat healthier. Mm-hmm. And it never changed my body. But following an injury while I was working as a nurse, which, yes, I also do, all of a sudden my illness trajectory just went straight north. And it was you couldn't ignore it anymore. I lost my mobility. I couldn't stand without feeling like I was standing on broken bones. And that's what started the journey towards finding out something really was wrong.
Tell me a little bit about the awareness, because you said right at the beginning there's no cure, but there are things you can do to help. So what has helped you the most, and what do you want people to be most aware of when it comes to lipedema?
Well, first off, I want you to be aware that it's incredibly common. We don't have specific prevalence numbers because it's not tracked in Canada, but it's estimated to be as common as 1 in 9 of those assigned female at birth. And we pass it down to our children. So
it's genetic.
It's genetic. And so when people think, oh, well, that's a rare disease, it's really not. It's rarely diagnosed and it's poorly understood. So much so that it's not actually taught in Canadian medical school, even though it's recognized by the World Health Organization. It's been known in literature since 1940. And we ask ourselves lots of questions about why do we not know so many things we should know about women's health.
So did you have to go internationally to actually get diagnosed and seek treatment then?
I did, yes. So that was one of the really big challenges, and why we needed the community to help so much was the only access to the treatments. So to answer your original question, the treatments for lipedema include wearing custom compression garments, which help support the tissue and just reduce pain. Nothing, again, is curative, but helps manage. Things like eating an anti-inflammatory diet, working on stress management, getting in the pool, doing aquatherapy. But the most effective intervention, and especially at the stage that I was at where I needed to have my mobility preserved, is a lymphatic-sparing form of liposuction, which is in no way cosmetic, which takes the diseased tissue out of the limbs. And that can only be done by international specialists at this time.
Does it grow back?
Statistically, we've seen that it doesn't. We have 12-year out long-term studies that show that, but like everything in all things, we need more data over a longer time. But for now, it looks like no.
I'm saving time to play some music here and talk about the concert for sure. So I just want to mention a couple things that you've been doing, if I may, because you actually took this advocacy for, pretty far here. I mean, you and 11 others formed a charitable organization, Lipedema Canada. I know you're working with the federal government and the provincial government. Health Minister Zoma Asseguera is going to be the first to have a Lipedema Awareness Day here, first province in Canada.
Yes.
So you've been doing all of those things behind the scenes. I want to ask both of you, before we play this music, though, back to this concert, how's it going to feel for you to be on stage with your wife tonight and be able to thank the people that, in many ways, got her through what would have been for your family, I suspect, a really difficult time?
It's an indescribably good feeling.
Tomorrow, the concert.
Yes. It's an indescribably good feeling just to be able to play music, to give back, and this will actually be our first show as a married couple. So that's
Hey, you guys just got married when?
October.
Last month.
Congratulations.
I feel like we've been away from each other more than we've been together since we got married, because there was so many, 2 lipedema conferences. I just got back from presenting at the World Lipedema Congress in Rome. And so I feel like I should have just sent you a postcard that said, I'll meet you on the stage.
Wish you were at the West End.
Wish you were at the West End.
And I guess what's it going to make you feel like to give back to the community that helped you so much when you were at your sickest?
It's really emotional. There was a benefit concert that the West End hosted for me back in 2023. And it was because the province originally had said, yeah, we'll pay for your treatments. And then they said, actually, we changed our minds. And when that happened, they took away my access to healthcare and my ability to get better. And so to be able to look back at those faces, this time not from the audience, but to stand on the stage and sing for them is going to be powerfully emotional, but so much fun, and I can't wait to do it.
Which song do you think is maybe gonna, I don't know if anything will bring you to tears. I shouldn't project that, but it would bring me to tears, so maybe I'm gonna, but which song will be the most maybe meaningful to you when you think about the messages in your music?
Gosh, it's hard to say. There's so many of our songs that are connected to the experience of traveling and getting to live the life that sometimes feels so far away now, between COVID and the timing of my illness. But the ones about being across the country, Hey Little Bird.
Which one are you listening to, yeah?
Yeah, I can hear it in the background. It makes me emotional. Every time we play McCarthy's, we fall apart. But I think there was one song that started it all for Dale and I, and it wasn't even ours. We met at the West End Cultural Center and formed our band in the parking lot after Dale played this incredible tune by Oliver Shore called A Song for All Seasons. And it's just this hauntingly beautiful fiddle sound. And I think as soon as I hear that sound hit the stage, it's all going to hit me all at once.
Thank you both for being here this morning.
Thank
all
you.
the best with your health, the awareness about lipedema, and the show tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
So that tune you'll have to wait for tomorrow night live, but you can hear Hey Little Bird. That's Emma Cloney and Dale Brown, the new Customs. They will play that free show at the West End Cultural Center tomorrow at 6 o'clock in collaboration with Arts Accessibility Network Manitoba. Let's hear the rest of Hey Little Bird on CBC.
Hey little bird, can't stay on my window pane. Frozen like a picture, captured in a frame. The great big world outside will just pass you anyway. So spread your wings and fly and come back again someday. So spread your wings and fly, come back again someday.
Just touching a little bit of a Hey Little Bird from the new Customs on CBC. Well, it is in Winnipeg today going to be an increasingly cloudy day with a high of 4 degrees. If you need us on the commute, 788-3093. Next on the show, let's build on a story you might have heard on World Report about people leaving to go south. Canadian snowbirds finding an escape from Canada's frigid winters. This year, though, things are expected to look a little bit different. And CBC's Julia Wong reported yesterday with me all about it.
Good morning.
So what made you want to look south?
You know, it's been a year since U.S. President Donald Trump was reelected. It's almost been a full year since we started to hear threats over tariffs, comments about Canada becoming the 51st state. So we wanted to get a sense of what impact that has all had on snowbirds specifically. You know, not just Canadians who are going down for a casual trip to the U.S., but Canadians who will spend a lot of time in the U.S. You know, for decades, there's been a history of Canadians going down to places like Arizona, Florida, and California, and they'll be there for months at a time, putting thousands of dollars into those economies. So our team traveled to Florida in early November, and we went around to several different communities just trying to get a sense of how they've come to rely on snowbirds.
We've done a couple of individual interviews here with Manitobans who've sold their properties, one actually in Florida. I'm curious what you heard from snowbirds.
Yeah, a few different things. You know, I spoke with Joanne Rowe of Toronto, and she retired 10 years ago, and that's when she decided she wanted to escape the winters, and she wanted to rent a condo in Fort Lauderdale, Florida for 3 months, and for very understandable reasons. You know, the hot weather there, she had views of the beach, she was making some great American friends, but then the trade war started, and those 51st state comments came, and she started to feel really uneasy. She felt like Canada wasn't being appreciated. Her friends would say about the 51st state comments, oh, that's just a joke. And she's like, I don't really see it that way. And she decided to act on how she felt. And that's when she decided to change where she vacations as a snowbird.
Lots of people were talking about how we cut out American products and this and that. So in my small little way, I could change my vacation for 3 months, which is a lot of money when you talk about food and things you buy during that time and supporting American economy. I could go to Puerto Vallarta.
So Ro there saying she's going to go to Mexico. We heard that from some other snowbirds as well. But, you know, that isn't the case for everyone. When we were in Florida, we ran into snowbirds who were already there from Quebec, from Ontario. And these people, they have property in Florida. You know, we're talking condos, we're talking houses. And they said, we don't like Canadian winters, and we're also not going to let politics get in the way of how we enjoy our retirement. So we went to this community called Maple Leaf Golf and Country Club. And they have very deep Canadian ties. You know, there's even a Canadian flag that flies at the entrance of this community. We saw some Blue Jays flags when we were there. We saw some Maple Leafs jerseys when we were there. And it's very Canadiana. And we ran into Silvio Conte from Ontario, and he bought a house there in 2020.
We enjoy coming down. We don't enjoy the winter. And I'm not going to let one individual dictate what makes us happy. So it didn't change anything for us.
So it didn't change his travel behavior, but what was really striking in my conversation with Conte was he said when he crossed the border and he was driving from Ontario down to Florida, he actually took off his front license plate and he was trying as best as he could to back in backwards to parking spots because he didn't want people to see where he was from. And I asked him, you know, why are you doing this? This is like kind of a drastic measure, isn't it? And he said that he had heard these stories about Canadians being targeted. He heard these stories about their vehicles being targeted. So he thought, you know what? I think I'm just going to take this little extra step to try to avoid any extra possible aggravation.
Actually, the Manitoban that I was referring to that, you know, sold his place in Florida also talked sort of about that, you know, different reception when the Canadian plates were spotted. That was his point of view, at least. So who you talked to some people leaving, some going somewhere else. What impact is this all having on the Florida communities?
Yeah, I mean, it's affecting them in very real ways. You know, take real estate, for example. We talked to several different realtors in different parts of the state, and they say when it comes to these Canadians who own property down there, well, the exchange rate may be one reason that they're selling, but they also say that political rhetoric is for sure another. They're seeing more Canadians selling those properties that they have in the state. I spoke with Zachary Starch, and he's originally from Canada. You know, he's from St. Catharines, Ontario, but he works as a real estate agent in Fort Myers, and here's what he had to say about what he was seeing.
Last winter, at the end of last winter, we had a big bump in Canadians, a lot of people in general, but Canadians in particular, listing their homes for sale. Unfortunately, like I said, it was a buyer's market. A lot of those listings have since expired. So people are, I think, thinking of selling again. They just want to see what happens, but they also know that it is, to be honest, not the best time to sell as far as the real estate market is concerned.
We also spoke with Josh Levy, and he's the mayor of Hollywood, which is a city sort of in between Miami and Fort Lauderdale. And we talked about some state tourism data that shows, the most recent data shows a 20% drop in Canadian visitors from the same time last year. So we talked about those numbers, and we talked about his worries over that fall in visitorship.
It means hundreds of millions of dollars of reduced economic impact and inflow into Florida. Clearly, it's meaningful. But we want our Canadian snowbirds to know and our Canadian visitors to know that Florida remains the welcoming place that they all know.
How is what we've just heard there, the decrease in business, how does it trickle down to local businesses?
Yeah, I mean, in short, it's hurting their bottom line. They're seeing fewer Canadians walk through the door. We went to the Atlantic Hotel and Spa, and it sits along the beach in Fort Lauderdale. And they've always had a very strong Canadian visitor presence since they opened in 2004. They tell me that Canadian snowbirds would stay, between 3 to 6 months at a time. And that's like a long period of time, right? Like that's a lot of money that they're giving to the hotel. That's a lot of money that they're also spending in the surrounding community. But since the start of this year, they've actually seen Canadian occupancy at the hotel fall 5%, and there are a lot of worries over what that means. I spoke with Amy Faulkner, the sales director at the hotel.
I had someone from Edmonton in the elevator, and I said, "Oh my gosh, thank you for being here. I'm so glad that you're here." And that particular person said, "We'll always come." And then I have other Canadians that I've reached out to that have stayed here before that are not coming back.
So this is a big worry. This is a big concern for Faulkner. I mean, her job is to bring in clients to the hotel, but the situation for her is so serious. She's actually going to other countries. She's taken these business trips to places like Brazil. She might be going to Argentina and Colombia to try to drum up new business, find new clients to make up for that shortfall that they're seeing. And it's not just these big hotels that are seeing the impacts. We're talking to mom and pop shops as well. So there is this restaurant called Dairy Bell. It was started by a Quebec couple in 1998. And they sell things, like hot dogs and burgers and fries and ice cream. And of course, they're from Quebec. They sell poutine. And a lot of people, when we were there at this restaurant, spoke French. Their peak season is the snowbird season from November to April. The vast majority of their clients during that time are Canadian. But the co-owner there, Francois Grenier, he's expecting a drop in business this year compared to last because of that change in snowbird behavior.
So that is Julia Wong from CBC, her report about American snowbirds and Canadians who are choosing not to go down south for the season. You can hear more on World Report. Your local news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's -4, another warm mid-November day in Winnipeg. Bit of a breeze, becoming cloudy with a high again today of 4. Manitoba is looking to end the use of sick notes in many cases. Right now, there is no provincial law, but a government source says the NDP government wants to change that. The province wants to ban employers from demanding sick notes unless their employee has been gone from work for 7 calendar days. Doctors Manitoba is thrilled with the plan. President Dr. Nichelle Desolé says sick notes are a waste of time that a physician could better spend on a legitimate medical concern.
The vast majority of these illnesses are not verifiable. If someone comes to the clinic and tells me that they've been unwell with a gastrointestinal illness, I have no way of confirming that outside of observation.
The proposed legislation is expected to be mentioned in today's throne speech, laying out the government's priorities for the coming session. Trauma counselors are heading to God's Lake Narrows as that community grapples with a fatal incident over the weekend. A 20-year-old man died early Sunday after drinking a mysterious liquid. 2 boys, who are 15 and 17, also drank that liquid and were flown to hospital in Winnipeg. RCMP believe 10 others may also have consumed the substance, but they were medically treated and released. Police are investigating. In an email to CBC, Kuwaitan Tribal Council Grand Chief Walter Westesikut says a trauma team is assisting community members. Westesikut says God's Lake Narrows Chief Gilbert Andrews tells him the community is in shock. Canadians will not be heading into a Christmas election. The Mark Carney Liberals have survived their first parliamentary test. The Liberal budget narrowly surviving a vote in the House, and the minority government still stands. The document passed last night 170 to 168, supported by all Liberals and the lone Green Party MP Elizabeth May. 2 Conservative MPs and 2 New Democrats did not cast votes. You can hear more on that story as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Some people in the Flin Flon area are still picking up the pieces after losing their cabins and homes to this summer's wildfires. One woman literally picking up the pieces, putting them on display at an art gallery. CBC's Rosanna Hempel brings us her story of turning grief into hope.
We felt pretty devastated.
Jan Modler's home of more than 50 years outside Flin Flon burnt down in June. But among the debris and rubble, she found some old belongings that comforted and surprised her. Things like pottery and sculptures had changed color in the heat or fused together. Some had a message that met the moment, like a now broken mug a friend gave her that said, "Ignore negativity."
We found it in the rubble, and I thought, well, that's another nice little message. The things that survive were absolutely amazing.
Now, a selection of her salvaged things are on display this month at the Northern Visual Arts Centre in Flin Flon.
Things that we found are really symbolic of part of it, I think, is resilience. Part of it is, change.
She says the exhibit is helping her grieve and process what happened. She hopes it helps others do the same. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Flin Flon.
A private security firm is working with RCMP in Steinbach to fight property crime at construction sites. It's part of a pilot project by Steinbach City Council. The pilot was recently extended after developers in the area say the overnight security patrols are working. Brian Brunel owns Steinbach Security Services. He says his mobile units allow police to focus on more serious crimes.
When there's an assault taking place or murders taking place or stuff where they really need to be addressing to or, creating their general investigative section again and getting enough members for that. That's what they need to focus on, and that's what I'm sure they really want to do, where we can actually help them out in other areas where it's not so many hours for the police officers.
Steinbach City Council is paying $360 a night for the private patrols. The current contract has been extended until the end of this year. Some Manitobans are upset about the prospect of paying more for hydro. A coalition of nonprofits is opposing Manitoba Hydro's request to raise rates. Hydro wants 3 annual rate increases of 3.5% starting next year. The Public Utilities Board is hearing arguments. Katrine DeLay, a lawyer representing the Consumers Coalition, says the rate hike is higher than necessary. She says about 4% of Manitoba households experience energy poverty, spending more than 10% of their income on electricity.
But that really hides who is disproportionately impacted by that, and that includes low-income households and First Nations households in particular, where that number of households who spend more than 10% of their household income on electricity is almost 40%.
Manitoba Hydro says the proposed rate hikes would allow the corporation to meet its mandate to provide safe, reliable, and affordable energy. You can find more on all these stories. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Heather Wells is live in our news center this morning. Here in Studio 15, I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on CBC 89.3 FM. Behind the glass today, Sophia Peralta-Baron, who's sitting in this morning, as well as our YouTube producer. Say hi to Darren Marash. Corey Funk, who's going to do our commute in a moment. And the fabulous Mr. Abby Adiyemi. Enjoying the weather? It's pretty nice, eh?
Yeah, pretty nice day for middle of November, Marcy. No white stuff on the ground. And I'm like, okay, I'll take this as much as I can. Just a quiet shift in more like the cloudier skies will be seen. The province warms slightly into the plus range with a mild southerly breeze. In the north, we're still seeing that light snow. Some areas seeing freezing drizzle this morning, and that will linger while down south, we're looking at mostly cloudy skies that will increase into the day by midday. Winnipeg now, you're waking up to -4 at the Fox, under a few clouds. Then that will turn mostly cloudy later with just some winds coming from the south. We warm up to +4 later before dropping to around 1 overnight. Similar conditions we're seeing in the Pembina Valley region. We're looking at -3, -4, depending on where you are, and it's partly cloudy there. It's going to turn more into like an overcast day for you there with a wind shift from the south. Your high also climbs to +4 later in the day. In the Westman region, tracking conditions from Brandon towards Nipawad all the way down to Minnedosa. We're looking at -1 at this time. Cloudy this morning with winds easing into southerly directions. Later in the day, we should see highs also near +4 for that region. In the Parkland region, Dauphin, Russell, Roblin, down towards Riding Mountain, we're looking at, let's see now, -3, -4 also under cloud cover. There's a slight chance of morning flurries in that part of the province and a risk of freezing rain to come with that. You see your high hit +3 later in the day. For the Interlake region, Gimli, you're sitting near -8 at the moment with increasing cloudiness expected through the day. The winds backs from the south later, and we're going to see highs near +3 for folks in the Interlake region. For our friends around the powerful influence surrounding communities, we're looking at light snow falling at this time. That should taper off by the afternoon. Currently, your temperature is around 0 with some winds to go with that. You see your high just staying near 0 for the rest of the day before dropping to -4 overnight. Thompson, good morning. You're at -9 at this time. Cloudy and cold. You're getting periods of light snow. Some freezing drizzle will come your way also, and your high will only be around -3. For Churchill and the York region, we're looking at fog patches this morning. That should lift as the skies remain mostly cloudy for the rest of the day, with a chance of light snow around the midday period and some drizzle to come with that. Current temperature is -9 in that region. You warm to -5 later before cooling to -8 tonight. So bottom line, slightly mild in the south, and we're getting snow in the north.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
I got to say, Corey Funk, I'm going to blow up this idea that winter is about the cold and how we deal with the cold.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think the reason that Manitobans, go, ugh, those that do about winter are doing it because of the prep.
Yeah.
Like, you're a dad of 2 kids. Your life
gosh.
changes entirely because they're tiny. They can't dress themselves.
Just getting out the door is like a whole thing these days. Like I swear, like, because like our kids, like, you need to get we're trying to find like the gloves, the toques. They're all over the place. They're in a pile, and we're arguing like, I put the toque over there. I thought you put it over there last time, and then it's just like it's a whole thing. And every time you want to leave, but then the kids are all rangy, and oh my gosh.
And then if you get a kid, have you ever wrapped them up like with all the layers, and then they go, I gotta pee?
Well, we just started potty training, so that is only a matter of time until that happens. Now that's what's up for us this winter for sure. And I'll be like, you know what, just pee, it'll keep you warm. By that point, it's like, we're too bad.
I don't know if this is good advice or not.
It's like, probably not.
And on our parenting call today, you're here for traffic. What's up?
Yes, actually, very quiet commute so far. Haven't heard of any major issues out there yet. But if you do see something going on, if you're walking, biking, driving, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. I'll let folks know what you're seeing. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Crystal Lee Ramlakan is here live via Zoom with our business news this morning from CBC. Good morning, Crystal Lee.
Hey, good morning, Marcy. I was just listening, and of course, the prep for winter is a pain, but I do think it's also because, when you go outside, your face hurts.
Yes.
Like,
There is that. I find that it's not just a kid prep, right? It's a car prep too, like adding the time to scrape and adding the time to heat the car.
Oh,
yeah.
I know. I hate scraping the windshield.
Which is why sometimes you just stay home and snuggle in.
There you go, and listen to us.
Big news, of course. There were some moments, though. Yesterday I was watching the vote in Ottawa for the Liberal government's budget vote, and it has passed, as we've been hearing. But there were some moments there where I'm like, hang on a minute, what's the math on this? Are we going to the polls? But we are not. What does this mean for the economy then, Crystal Lee?
Yeah, well, Prime Minister Mark Carney's first budget calls for billions of dollars in new spending to help the economy in the face of a trade war, along with cuts to the public service the government says would save billions of dollars. Now, while Conservatives maintain the budget will drive up the cost of living, several premiers pushed for the budget to pass because they did not want to see another election right now, including Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew, for sure. Now, budget votes are treated like confidence votes, so the government needed a win to avoid another election, like you were saying. So here's more from New Brunswick Premier Susan Holt and BC Premier David Eby.
I think folks want us to get on with it. We're in the middle of a trade war. We need to put our focus on growing our economy.
It should not be another equalization program. I said that the federal government needs to be relentless and remorseless in pushing for economic growth wherever they can find it.
Now, Carney updated the premiers on the budget, including for funding for major projects and the state of trade talks with the U.S. during a first ministers' meeting earlier yesterday. And it was actually the first time the premiers and the prime minister met since Ontario's anti-tariff ad and President Donald Trump breaking off negotiations. So with the budget now passed and the federal government looking fairly stable, premiers are looking for the federal government to follow through now on the billions promised for shovel-ready nation-building projects in the budget.
And we will ask more about that tomorrow because now we've had two tranches of that announced, of those projects announced, and Manitoba's not on either of those lists. So we have the premier here tomorrow. Let's move to the market. Stock markets closed lower all across Canada and the States yesterday. What's behind that?
Yeah, that's because a decline in tech stocks weighed on Canada's main stock index yesterday. So that's because there are concerns about a potential AI bubble and consumer spending. So companies that have done exceptionally well are seeing sluggish momentum right now. And given the uncertainty, some market watchers say people are unclear as to what lies ahead in the next year and then into next year and the next quarter. And so the U.S. stock market also lost ground as NVIDIA and other big tech companies led a broader decline. And, you know, this follows 2 weeks of sharp declines that have largely kept major indexes in check following some recent records that we've been seeing. Now, critics have been warning that the U.S. stock market could be primed for a drop, and that's because of how high prices have shot since April, leaving them looking pretty expensive. Investors will be closely watching NVIDIA tomorrow when it will report how much profit it made during the summer. And then we're also going to see results from heavyweight consumer names such as Walmart and Home Depot this week. And the market is watching for clues on consumer spending, especially as the holiday shopping season gears up.
And before you go this morning, Ford is partnering with Amazon now. What's going to come out of that?
Well, this is to allow dealers to sell used vehicles online. So the new program will allow customers to find secure financing, start paperwork, and schedule a pickup at participating Ford dealers. So this deal comes 2 years after Amazon said it would allow auto dealers to sell cars through its site, starting with South Korean automaker Hyundai. And then earlier this year, Amazon also partnered with rental company Hertz to sell used vehicles through its site as well. Now, so far, Ford says vehicles are available on Amazon Autos in Los Angeles, Seattle, and Dallas. So, of course, not Canada right now, but there are plans to expand to additional cities in the coming months.
Do you remember when Amazon was books?
Yes.
I feel like a generation ago. I guess it was a generation ago.
I know. It feels like a lot of people just buy books now for like decor.
Right. There is that too. All right, Crystal, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
Crystal Ramlakan joins us daily via Zoom with our business news. It is 6:46 a.m. on your Tuesday morning. Hopefully it's going well. Thanks for spending some time with us here on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Well, if you are on Facebook and you follow us during the show on my Marcy Marcusa page, then you're going to see that I asked what you would ask the mayor of the city of Winnipeg and what you would ask the premier of Manitoba. That's because we have regular monthly interviews with them on the program, as you know. But this week we have both of them. So tomorrow the premier will be here, Wab Canoe, and on Thursday we will have Scott Gillingham with us, joining us live here, the mayor of the city of Winnipeg. So usually we try to focus those interviews down so we can have time to kind of really drill into either a decision that's been made or to try to understand something from our leaders. And so we are asking you for your thoughts, just to make sure that what we are going to be asking about matches what you care about, because that's, of course, why we're here. So you can write to us. I also want to encourage you to use the listener line on anything you hear here on the show. Any kind of feedback you have for us, or a pitch or a story, 788-3205. Well, Canadians will not be going to the polls this winter now that Mark Carney's budget has passed, as we've been sharing in the House of Commons. Now, here's the moment when that happened, the vote results being read out by the Speaker of the House.
Okay. The table will now compile the results of the vote.
Yeas pour 170, 170. Nays contre 168, 163.
So in case you missed that, because you can hear all the cheering, 170 to 168, the budget passes. The Liberals, though, needed help. Green Party leader Elizabeth May and the abstention of a few MPs, Conservative and NDP MPs, made it happen. To the NDP party next, we want to hear a bit from NDP leader Don Davies, interim leader. He spoke with reporters about the abstentions of the two in his party. He says that the budget does simply not meet the needs of Canadians. But he was pressed after the budget. One of the reporters was asking him if this was in line with his party's values. He says after speaking with people across the country, it was clear there's no appetite for another federal election so soon after we went to the polls.
We have decided to put the interests of our country first, to vote against the budget, but to help prevent an election. Canada is facing instability and overlapping crises. In these challenging times, we must put our country's well-being first above partisan interests. When the next election comes, whenever that may be, Canadians will hold Mark Carney responsible and to account for his record and for the choices that he made in this budget. But today, New Democrats are choosing stability over political games.
It's not just partisan interest, though. I mean, your party's abstentions just allowed for the government to cut thousands of public worker jobs. How do you square that being the party of workers?
Well, this is a Liberal budget, and this is what happens when you vote for Liberals, is these are the kind of neoliberal, neoconservative policies that you get. And we've opposed this budget. That's why we stood up and we're voting against the budget. We can't support it. They did not earn our support. And we tried to make changes to this budget. But at the same time, again, Canadians clearly don't want an election right now. And given the serious economic challenges facing our country right now, we don't think that it would be good for our country. So New Democrats have expressed our opposition to this budget, and we have said that we are not going to force an election right now that clearly Canadians don't want and our country doesn't need.
Was this about your electoral prospects?
Go ahead.
Was this about your electoral prospects, the fact that the NDP can't afford an election right now?
Not at all. No, I mean, this is not about us. This is about Canadians, and that's why the NDP, we took our time last week to go across the country to talk to Canadians and our constituents and find out what they said and what they wanted. And it is very clear. There is a strong consensus in this country that Canadians do not want an election basically 6 months after the last one. They also are feeling the precarity and the instability of the moment. We have Donald Trump still menacing our country and serious economic issues. Canadians want us to be in Parliament addressing those serious issues, and so that's why we're taking the position that we're doing.
That is Don Davies, interim leader of the federal NDP, talking about the budget yesterday, which did pass, and that meant that two of his NDP MPs abstained. We have Ryan Tumulty to talk about this morning, political reporter with the Toronto Star, joins us most Tuesdays. Good morning.
Good morning.
Before we ask you to react to Don, I don't know how you were feeling yesterday. I was watching. There was a moment where I'm like, are we going to go to an election here? What'd you make of how the vote shook out?
Yeah, I will say when Don Davies stood up and voted no,
a lot of us were wondering what was going to happen next. Because quite frankly, the expectation was there going to be a few abstentions in the NDP caucus, and the expectation was that he was going to be one of them. So it was quite the moment. Lots of drama. Interestingly, as much as there was lots of drama, there was also a real expectation in every party that in the end the budget was going to pass, and every party but the Bloc played a role in that yesterday. So it was quite an interesting outcome.
Tell me a little bit about how you feel like you just heard from Don Davies there and how he's positioning why the NDP did this. Can they have it both ways when it comes to how their actions will be perceived by the public as the party of workers? Will people, I guess NDP voters think, okay, they were in a tough spot. We actually didn't want to go to the polls, perhaps? How do you think this will be perceived?
Yeah, I mean, I have yet to meet a Canadian who is eager for an election over Christmas time. So I think in that way, the NDP is reading the public sentiment. There is not a lot for the NDP in this budget in the sense of, some of the programs that they advocate for or things like that. And certainly the Liberals didn't seem to be in much of a negotiating mood. But I'll also say that there were no poison pills in this budget either. You weren't seeing the Liberals talk about ending the dental care program, for example, or tightening labor restrictions or something like that. So they weren't trying to take away any of the concessions that the NDP won in the last parliament. They say they are committed to all of those programs. So that is, it might be small comfort to NDP voters, but that is something. And I think, that allowed the NDP to see a path forward. I will ask about Elizabeth May in a moment, but I want to move to the Conservatives. There were 2 Conservative MPs, is that correct, that abstained as well? Can we talk about the Conservative vote? Yeah, absolutely. So the 2 MPs that abstained, everyone else voted no, but the 2 MPs that abstained were Shane Stubbs from Alberta. She was apparently on a medical leave. And then Matt Genereux from Edmonton. And I think there's a lot of questions about his abstention. Of course, there has been lots of reporting that he was preparing to cross the floor to the Liberals, that he backed away from that. But he has abstained since. He has not voted with his party or at all really since. The Conservatives were not angry about that yesterday. You didn't hear them talking about removing him from caucus or anything like that. But I think there is a question about how long this goes forward and what kind of tensions it might create in the Conservative caucus. Will the Conservatives be quietly happy that this didn't go through? Because the election timing, one could argue right now for them wouldn't have been good either. Will they give him a pass because of that, or is that just not the way party politics works, too cutthroat that they're going to hold him to account? Yeah, I don't know. Yesterday they said that there would be no caucus discipline for the vote that he missed. Certainly that's not normal. So I think maybe they are giving him some sort of a pass. Or they're also recognizing that as someone who's resigning, there's not a lot they can do. So I think maybe they're eager to avoid the drama in that regard. So go ahead, Ryan. Sorry. Yeah, so I think it'll just be a matter of wait and see on that front. Certainly, I think the party is prepared to move on from all of this. And I don't think if the Conservatives really wanted to bring the government down, they could have done so with their own motion 2 weeks ago, made it more clear, made it more, we have no confidence in the government without sort of the frills that they put on it. So I don't think anyone was eager for this election. Let's talk Elizabeth May then. She said early in the day she would vote for the budget, so it was not a surprise when she got up, got the big cheer from the Liberals when she did so. Did she receive any concessions from the PM to get her support in the House? Yeah, we saw that concession play out live, really. She got an extra question in question period. She wasn't supposed to get a question yesterday. She used that to ask the Prime Minister about his commitment to the Paris climate targets. And she got an answer that I guess was satisfactory for her, because then she changed her view on the budget. Just last week, she theatrically pulled it out of her purse and stomped on it and said that's what she thinks of the budget. So, ultimately, I think she was also reading the public mood that this is not an election anybody wants, that people are prepared to move forward without going to the polls, that they don't want this. She acknowledged that it's possible she was being naive by taking the Prime Minister's word for it on the Paris climate targets when there are so many measures in the budget that she disapproves of. But she was prepared to take that.
Thanks for your time as always, Ryan, and your analysis. Appreciate it.
All right, take care.
That's Ryan Tumulty live with us on CBC via Zoom, political reporter with the Toronto Star, one of the regular guests we have on the show to analyze what's happening in Ottawa. So if you want to read more about the budget, cbc.ca is where you can go and check out the vote. I know we had to do that about 3 times this morning, just checking the math. Who abstained, who voted for and against, and who just wasn't there and why. So you can read all about the breakdown and then read more about the budget as well and what is coming and not coming for to support your life here in Manitoba. When it comes to transfer payments, supports are going to be giving to different projects and such. You can find it all online with analysis. It is now 3 minutes to 7 o'clock in World Report. Right now, though, let's dip into local news headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba wants to eliminate mandatory sick notes for short-term absences from work. It could only be requested by an employer after a worker has been off for 7 calendar days. That is the proposal. A source tells CBC the government is going to tease this bill in today's speech from the throne. So we'll hear more about that as well. A woman from Flin Flon who lost her home outside the city to this summer's wildfires is channeling her grief into art. Jan modelers turning some fire-damaged belongings into art and showcasing them at a local art gallery. We'll hear all about it coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Weather-wise, today, as you've been hearing Abby mention, cloudy -4 right now. Today's high is going to be 4 degrees. That cloud will stay with us, though. Brandon, cloudy and -1. Similar to Winnipeg, you'll go to 4 today as well. Mostly cloudy -9 up in the city of Thompson. For you, periods of light snow will begin this morning. Your high is going to be right around -3. In the next hour of Information Radio, we are going to be continuing our series about conflict at work. Workers have less capacity to shake off workplace conflicts now than they did pre-COVID, apparently. That's according to a mediator who trains companies to better resolve workplace issues. He's going to give us some of the tools that he uses in training. That's coming up after 7 o'clock. Also in the next hour, 7 days off work, as Heather just mentioned, without requiring a doctor's note. We're going to hear more from Doctors Manitoba on their point of view on that. And then at 10 to 8 this morning, to a serious story. As you've been hearing last week, Sean Lamb was granted statutory release after he was sentenced in 2013 for the deaths of 2 Indigenous women in Winnipeg. But the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is calling for change to the justice system to better protect victims' families before an offender is released from prison. We will hear in the next hour from them. We have AMC Grand Chief Kyra Wilson, who's going to be joining us for an interview, so stay tuned. World Report is coming up at 7 o'clock. It's 1 minute to. Stay with us.
Today on The Current.
Canadians may know Avril Benoit as a former CBC journalist, but for 20 years she has worked at Doctors Without Borders. And as she leaves that humanitarian organization, she reflects on her time as CEO at a tumultuous moment in this world.
You will find so much goodness in the world if you look for it.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Canadians will not be going into another election. Prime Minister Mark Carney's minority Liberals will continue to govern. Their budget passed the House of Commons, but it required a handful of abstentions from some key NDP and Conservative MPs. Janice McGregor is in our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, the Liberals live to fight another day. What now?
Marcia, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne is out immediately today with his next flex. The legislation to actually implement the measures in this budget has been put on notice, meaning we'll soon get to tuck into its actual policy and monetary substance, something that's been, frankly, somewhat overshadowed. Now, that legislation means more confidence votes. But the way this first stare down ended could be instructive because multiple parties blinked here. 2 weeks ago, Elizabeth May was theatrically throwing her budget book onto the floor to denounce its climate measures. By yesterday, a few words of assurance from the Prime Minister in question period, enough for her to vote in favour. And both the New Democrats and the Conservatives held back, with 2 MPs abstaining. That means neither can blame the other for propping up the government. Anyone that's watching only Pierre Poilievre's social media saw no acknowledgement of this in his messages to his followers about why most Conservatives voted no on a budget that they insist remains unaffordable. But what opposition parties also couldn't afford was another election.
What does the way this unfolded tell you about how things will play out in the House between now and the winter break?
Well, today, for example, the House of Commons is debating bail reform legislation. These are changes premiers, mayors, as well as the opposition have all demanded. The opposition has a competing private member's bill of its own that calls for similar action. After enabling the Liberals to keep governing, is there an openness, at least on this bill, for a compromise to deal with what's a shared public safety concern if we aren't going to plunge into another election? Will MPs use this time to make progress, or are bad feelings running too hot to collaborate just now?
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. The budget shows Transport Canada will be surrendering most of its aviation wing to the Defence Department. But the details of that plan are shrouded in secrecy. Neither Transport nor the Finance Department will say what the integration of civilian planes means for coastal surveillance or the military. The CBC's Murray Brewster has been speaking to experts to learn more.
Let's be frank. The reason this is happening is to increase the percentage of gross domestic product that Canada spends on defense.
Arctic defense expert Michael Byers cutting straight to the chase about why Transport Canada's aviation fleet is being folded into national defense.
Trying to build up to those magic numbers that Donald Trump wants without thinking it through in terms of how do you fulfill those essential civilian functions that the Coast Guard and Transport Canada fulfill.
Since it was tabled in the budget, CBC News has asked both Transport Canada and the Finance Department about the implications. They've refused to explain, saying information will be released in due course. Transport Canada has 52 aircraft with a strictly civilian function, including monitoring waterways for pollution and danger to marine life. Now, this looks a lot like the move of the Coast Guard into the Defense Department. Coast Guard Commissioner Mario Pelletier recently had trouble answering questions from a Commons committee on how they would conduct surveillance on behalf of the military and what they would do if they ran into trouble.
Right now, we're not looking at defending because we're not looking at being in a theater where there'd be confrontation.
The merger of Transport Canada's aviation wing with DND is likely to be even more complicated, especially given that the department recently accepted delivery of an Israeli-made drone for Arctic surveillance, a capability the Air Force won't have for a few years. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Jeffrey Epstein files will be front and center today in Washington. The U.S. House of Representatives is expected to vote on the full release of the Epstein files, and it is now being backed by the U.S. president after dismissing the information in the files for months. Donald Trump says Republicans should vote in favor of making the information public. The CBC's Willie Lowry joins me now from Washington. And Willie, what are we expecting today?
So we expect the House to vote in favor of compelling the Justice Department to release the Epstein files. Even though Republicans hold a slim majority, the fact that this has been a bipartisan effort led by Republican Thomas Massie and Democrat Ro Khanna suggests the numbers are there. Those two politicians are also expected to hold a press conference outside the Capitol building this morning alongside several victims of Jeffrey Epstein. President Donald Trump's reversal over the weekend suddenly supporting the release of these files is another indication that the House will likely vote in favor of the release. But don't expect to see the files anytime soon. This is just the first of several steps that need to take place before a release of documents.
So if it gets passed today, what's next?
It would be up to the Senate to even decide if it wants to vote on the bill. It's under no obligation, and so far Senate Majority Leader John Thune has been mum on the issue. John Barrasso, the second highest-ranking Republican in the Senate, indicated that they would at least look at the bill.
The House is going to vote, try to make a decision, and we'll see if they send something to the Senate. And if they do, we'll take a look at that. But we want transparency and accountability.
If the Senate votes on the bill and it passes, it's then up to Trump to sign off on it. And then, finally, the Department of Justice would be compelled to release the files. There is another way. Trump could circumvent all these votes and simply order the Attorney General to release the documents.
Thank you, Willie.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Willie Lowry in Washington. We have an update on the kidnapping of 25 schoolgirls yesterday in northwestern Nigeria. The school principal has told the Associated Press one of the girls who was abducted has escaped. He says she ran through forests and returned home late last night. There is still no group that has taken responsibility for this abduction. The United Nations Security Council is backing U.S. President Donald Trump's plan for Gaza. The blueprint put forward by Trump paves the way for a possible sovereign Palestinian state and an international stabilization force. But as the CBC's Tom Perry reports, both Israel and Hamas are already raising objections.
The draft resolution has been adopted.
The UN Security Council endorsed Donald Trump's plan for Gaza, with America's two main rivals, Russia and China, abstaining. Mike Waltz, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, called the vote a significant step toward a peaceful and prosperous Gaza.
This resolution today is just the beginning. An adoption of resolution today demonstrates the overwhelming support for the president's vision.
But critics say that vision is unclear. Both Russia and China have pointed out there remain big questions around Trump's plan for a board of peace, with him as chair, to oversee a transitional government in Gaza, and around Trump's proposal for an international stabilization force to work with Palestinian police to provide security in the territory. Hamas, which still controls Gaza, is supposed to disarm under the peace plan and play no role in any future government. The group has rejected the UN resolution and its calls for an international force to patrol the territory. Israel, meanwhile, has raised concerns about the resolution's mention of a potential pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood. With Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu repeating his government's position, it stands firmly against any plan to establish a Palestinian state. Tom Perry, CBC News, Jerusalem.
The Giller Prize is Canada's most influential prize for literary fiction, and the 2025 winner might be a familiar face.
The winner of the 2025 Giller Prize is Suvankan Tamavansa.
Suvankan Tamavansa is now a two-time Giller winner. She took home the award in 2020 for her short story collection, How to Pronounce Knife. Last night, she was named the 2025 winner for her novel, Pick a Color.
And to my mom and dad, I'm sorry I didn't tell you about this. And that you're finding out about it on the 6 o'clock news.
Pick a Color is the story of a boxer turned manicurist and how she quietly navigates the tension between her outward anonymity and her deeply intelligent inner life. Tamavangsa takes home $100,000, and she will also receive a 2-week residency at the Banff Centre. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, hi, everybody. How's your Tuesday going? I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're doing fine here. Our team at CBC. Thanks for joining us for the show. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and YouTube. We're going to have a nice day. You're going to be well above zero today. This hour on the program, we will be talking about conflict, workplace conflict. We're doing a bit of a series here. We started yesterday on CBC. So workers have less capacity, apparently, to shake off workplace conflict now than they did before COVID. That's according to a mediator who will join us. He trains companies to better resolve workplace conflict. So stay tuned for that. Also, 7 days off of work without requiring a doctor's note. That could soon be the norm for employees in Manitoba. Doctors Manitoba weighs in on what we expect to be in the throne speech today. And Sean Lamb, as you heard last week, was granted statutory release after being sentenced in 2013 for the deaths of 2 Indigenous women. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is calling for changes to the justice system to better protect victims' families before an offender is released. And we are going to hear from the Grand Chief this hour. Kyra Wilson will join us before 8. Right now, here's Heather Wells with other news.
Well, Manitoba is looking to end the use of sick notes in many cases. Right now, there is no provincial law, but a government source says the NDP wants to change that. The province wants to ban employers from demanding sick notes unless their employee has been gone from work for 7 calendar days. The proposed legislation is expected to be mentioned in today's speech from the throne, and Doctors Manitoba is thrilled with the plan. We'll hear more. A community in shock. A 20-year-old man from God's Lake Narrows died early Sunday morning after drinking a mysterious liquid. 2 boys, 15 and 17, who also drank it, were flown to hospital in Winnipeg. RCMP believe 10 others may also have consumed the substance, but they were medically treated and released. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Into the forecast we go. Abby has the details.
Yeah, we're expecting that gentle push of warmer air, and most areas trend to see cloudy conditions by midday. Southern Manitoba, we're looking at dry conditions. At the north, we see more like a light snow and a freezing drizzle being present around Thompson into Churchill this morning, and some also around the Power Flame Flown. Winnipeg right now, -4 still, few clouds through the day. It becomes mostly cloudy, a soft southerly breeze we will feel, and then we'll see temperatures climb to +4, and that's what we will see for most of the conditions down south. But up north, we're looking at temperatures ranging from 0 to -10 at this time. Winnipeg -4 on the way to a mild +4.
Corey, how's the commute?
Very quiet commute so far. Haven't heard of any major issues out there yet, but if you see something going on, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, if you work, you've probably had a workplace moment of conflict at one time or another, or maybe more than a moment. A report from Myers-Briggs Company found that employees spend more than 4 hours a week dealing with conflict. So we started a series trying to figure out what you think about it, how often it happens, and how it gets dealt with. Yesterday on the show, we did hear from a number of Winnipeggers. All of them said they've dealt with conflict in their workplaces. But we also heard from registered psychotherapist and behavioral sciences professor Laura Kavanaugh. She specializes in workplace conflict. Here's a bit of what she had to say.
I just want to be clear that we're not talking about really egregious violations of workplace behavior. So we're not talking about harassment or abuses of power, but just like people who are hard to work with. But what the research shows is that what predicts workplace conflict, both task-related and interpersonal actually, is the level of workplace support. But it can also be really unclear expectations and a lack of clarity among the workplace culture. So poorly communicated expectations, blurred hierarchy where no one really knows who's in charge, people who have shared authority but differing goals, goals that are unclear or poorly defined, right? So a lot of it is miscommunication or a lack of clarity.
Our next guest has been helping companies here in Manitoba resolve workplace conflicts since 2003. David Falk is a senior mediator and trainer at Facilitated Solutions. That's a Winnipeg-based workplace conflict management firm. And he joins us live via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for weighing in on our series here. I saw you listening to Kavanaugh describing the nature of workplace conflicts. Does that sit with you? Like, what typically leads a company to reach out to you for an intervention?
Sure. What she described rings very true. In our work, probably the most common denominator is things that happen that land poorly, that people start generating assumptions about other people's motives. And that tends to start the cycle going in terms of once you start thinking that someone has negative motives for why they did something that caused you hurt or harm or frustration, people start withdrawing trust, building up their own defensiveness, and doing things that start a whole cycle of actions and reactions that can be quite counterproductive.
And are they building up that whole cycle of actions and reactions and losing that trust after they have talked to the person about it? Or does the assumption wheel begin and then people actually don't get in the same room early enough?
Oh, yeah. No, people seldom talk about things, unfortunately. There's so much avoidance and so much certainty. And one of the challenges that I was listening to your earlier resource person, they talked about how it's usually about miscommunication. And that is often true. However, often people don't believe it's about miscommunication. They're pretty sure that they know what the problem is, and the problem is the other person. And they've done a diagnosis on their own. They're convinced the other person's harassing them or bullying them, or since Trump's been in our zeitgeist, that the person's a narcissist. And those are these fairly significant assumptions that people lock into and become increasingly convinced that that's the reason why the other person is saying or doing what they're doing, as opposed to acknowledging that you might be right. I get it is a possibility, but the odds are, well, not necessarily that great that you could also be wrong. Like, what if it is a simple misunderstanding? So often a lot of our work is helping people have long overdue conversations that they probably should have or could have had weeks, if not months, if not in some cases years earlier, to try to unwind and figure out, hey, how is it that we're here? And what do we need from each other to be able to kind of reset trust and reset our ability to kind of work effectively with each other?
Well, when it comes to workplace conflict, one of the things that you sometimes hear is that in any exchange, it might be about, it's about impact, not intent. So you can acknowledge the impact, not necessarily the intent, because then that could lead you to becoming defensive. But obviously, it should be also about understanding intent, because as you said, if you assume the intent is more nefarious than it might have been, you won't get anywhere anyway. How do you mediate around that idea? Impact, not intent.
Yeah, one of the things that I think a lot of us have been taught back in the day is how to be assertive, how to describe people's impact. And that's fine. It's a time and place to do that. The missing piece for a lot of us is that we're not necessarily curious about what did the other person actually mean. I know what you said. I know how it impacted me. The one piece of the equation that I don't know for sure is what your actual purpose was, what your goal was, the reason why you or your team said or did what they did. And so being able to lead with a bit of curiosity, starting a conversation with some questions as opposed to declarations of you said this and it had this impact on me or on my unit or on the operation. Starting off by being able to actually get the intentions on the table and privileging both the impact and the intentions can be really helpful.
Can you give us some scenarios without naming anyone, of some of the conflicts that you've helped mediate over the years? Or maybe pick one that's pretty common?
Sure. Here's in seniority-based workplaces, unionized workplaces. Someone is dragging their heels on declaring annual vacation, and they happen to have 3 weeks more of seniority than you do. And why are they dragging their heels? And we can all start filling out imaginations of, well, they're doing it just because they're rubbing their 3 weeks in seniority in my face. Well, that might be true, but that might not be true. You don't know for sure. But if you start thinking that it's true and you start acting that way, and you might start pressuring your colleague to, hey, you got to declare your vacation. Oh, I'm going to describe impact. I'm getting frustrated that you're doing this. And it can lead to a whole power struggle versus what's going on. In one case, the one person's partner had a new employment situation, was no longer had seniority in their employment because it wasn't a promotion type opportunity. Reason that they had new employment was something that maybe I had a little bit of embarrassment with. And so they didn't want to share that with their colleagues. And sure, you don't have to. It's not your, there's privacy issues going on there. At the same time, not sharing anything had a different consequence because it left people with their conspiracy theories about why their colleague was kind of lording over their 3 weeks of seniority over their colleagues. So being able to help people unravel things. And that one, ironically, a case like that had chased all the way up where other people try and jump in and fix. So the supervisor tries to fix it and it doesn't go well. And then the union gets involved and tells that supervisor to stop pressuring their team members to declare because they know the rules. And then management gets involved and tells that union staffer to stop bullying their own members. And by the time we get involved, head of HR is involved, the president of the company is involved, and they're having a bit of a proxy war about two people that are frontline technicians who need to sort out their vacation schedule, and they're not even in the room. So sometimes we need to kind of dismiss a few folks and get the right people in the room to have the right kind of conversation.
You said a couple of things in this conversation that I think are really current. So one of the things you said is the term. You said since Trump came on the scene, people are using the term narcissism. We hear all these sort of trends and terms come in and out depending on what's going on in the world. And also generations will have different views on what is what you would approach a coworker with versus what you go to HR with versus what you raise with your boss, maybe behind closed doors. How do you navigate that? Like, how much of a challenge is it right now that people won't talk to each other? Let's just start with that, but that they will, make those assumptions and make things bigger, quicker. Is that a trend, or what are you noticing for the trends?
I'm not sure if that's a trend. That's been a through line through the 30 years that I've been working in this space of people being hesitant to have the honest conversation. I think one of the things that we have been trying to help leaders and employees really lean into is start by trying to understand your own default settings. We all have patterns when it comes to dealing with conflict. Some of our patterns we learned under less than ideal situations of our own stress growing up in our families or our early employment situations. And so we learned a pattern. It might not be terribly functional. So if you got some self-awareness of what is your default setting, given your personality, given who you are, that's great. Have some self-awareness. And then have some situational awareness of what am I actually dealing with? And then figure out how can you show up as needed in this moment to have the right kind of conversation about the right kind of stuff with the right person. And often the temptation is to talk to everybody but the person you need to have the conversation with. It's one thing to go and kind of think through and get some coaching support from a friend or from a supervisor. That's one thing, but often we're not even having those conversations. We're more venting about people, and the person that we need that has some missing information, who could tell us what they actually meant by their email that they sent, or that could tell us what they meant by a comment that they shared at a stand-up meeting that we took offense to. The person who has the missing information is often the last one to know, the last one that we talk to, which is really a shame. It's when it's you that is the person who is taken the wrong way, and you find out that everyone else knows about the situation, it adds another layer to loss of trust within the workplace.
How big of a problem, this is the last question, although I could ask 10 more. Sure. How big of a problem is lack of training for those that are supposed to deal with these issues? So the HR professionals perhaps, or the senior managers and such, because we heard yesterday that that's a big challenge. So you're talking about having the right people in the room.
Yeah.
But there's also navigating a whole world of things that, maybe your boss doesn't have a psychology degree. I mean, that's kind of where we're at,
difficult
right?
Conversations are difficult. So absolutely, there needs to be some training and support for that. And communication, I remember one of the people I studied with, he said, the more I learn about communication, the more I'm amazed that we understand each other at all, because it's so easy for things to get lost through the various kind of filters and biases and complexities that's involved in just speaking and hearing and actually having meaningful connection. And so increasing one's capacity and ability through training is super helpful. And probably about a third of our business is involved in equipping leaders and staff members with those type of tools.
Thank you very much for your time this morning, David. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thanks for a chance to talk.
So much to think about there, right? David Falk, Senior Mediator and Trainer at Facilitated Solutions, a Winnipeg-based workplace conflict management firm. Now, I don't know if you want to weigh in on this. Have you been working for a long time? Do you think that the nature of conflict in workspaces has changed over time? If so, what are the new things that you're noticing? How have you been dealing with them? Or if you're a manager, how do you manage? How have you been managing through conflict solutions? And maybe if you're a new employee, what do you bring to the workplace around this? The new thinking around when to approach things that you perceive as conflict. Yesterday, I found that interesting. That question's coming from hearing about how some of the generational divides are different, where older generations would have, no matter what happened, never, said anything to their boss, maybe in situations where they even should have, where younger generations are quicker to say, hang on a minute, that's not right. There is an issue there. But how is that navigated? Workplace conflict, lots to talk about. 725-788-3205. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for being with us this morning on Tuesday. Hopefully you're going to have a good day at the office today. I'm not in conflict with my colleague, Scott Regier. He's here just for sports, and I'm cool with that. How are you doing this morning?
Tuesday in November, I'm doing pretty well here, Marcy.
Good. Let's start in the NHL. The Jets are inching closer to a fully healthy lineup.
Yeah, the team activated forwards Morgan Barron and Cole Koepke from injury reserve. Both players eligible then to suit up tonight against Columbus. although only Barron was taking normal line rushes yesterday. One player that will be in the lineup tonight for sure, Dylan Samberg. The defenseman made his season debut during the recent road trip, but will be making his home debut tonight. Having evolved into a key defenseman for the club last year, head coach Scott O'Neill says Samberg will be key to the team finding success this season.
He's got great feet and great mobility, but he's also anticipating. He anticipates really well. That's why I think he's a good penalty killer. He seems to stay one step ahead of the next play. But at the end of the day, just him being able to log big minutes helps JMO's ice time to kind of drop in the heavy category in that way. So I think that each game he got better and better. I think that he's got some rust off him, and now he looks like he's more like the guy that we need.
JMO would be Josh Morrissey. Being able to spread minutes around Morrissey and not rely so heavily on Morrissey, especially in the Olympic year, will be critical to Winnipeg avoiding further injuries. So with Samberg back, things are looking up. Puck drop tonight, 7 o'clock.
Let's talk about a group of curlers who've just been named to Canada's Paralympic team.
Yeah, a veteran group who are the first squad to be announced for the Games that will be contested next March in Italy. It will be comprised of Saskatchewan's Gilbert Dash, BC's Ina Forrest, and 3 Ontarians, Mark Idison, John Thurston, and Kalinda Joseph. Joseph will be the lead, which is a big change from the last Paralympics in Beijing, where she was an alternate, just trying, like everybody else, to navigate the unique challenges of the pandemic.
I'm excited for them to experience that and to actually have us experience it. Well, me anyway. Some of us haven't been to an Olympic or Paralympic Games where there were fans in the stands that were actually cheering for us. That will be phenomenal. That first game will be really emotional. You're playing against Italy. There's a lot of fans there for Italy. Hopefully more Canadian fans for us. But certainly having family there will be really important.
Joseph and the new-look Canadian team has played 15 international matches so far and hoping to add another 15 before arriving in Milan Cortina. Canada's last gold medal in wheelchair curling came at the 2014 Games in Sochi.
Let's finish with soccer and another big day in the World Cup qualifying situation.
Yeah, 5 spots up for grabs, Marcy, in Europe, and another in this neck of the woods. Suriname and Curacao are among the nations that, with a positive result tonight, can book their first ever appearances in the planet's biggest sporting event. Canada, of course, already has a spot as a co-host and is busy preparing, including a match tonight in Florida against Venezuela, a match where we will see central defender Alfie Jones make his debut. Aggressive, skilled with the ball, Jones could be a huge addition to this Canadian team. And just 7 months from the World Cup, he's certainly a late addition. That is because, as the son of 2 Brits, Marcy, Jones didn't even realize he was eligible to play for Canada. Speaking on the Footy Prime podcast, he says a conversation with Canadian midfielder Liam Miller, when they were both playing for Hull City last season, changed everything.
I think we were in a sauna at the time. It was on the conversation about Canada, and I said, "Yeah, my grandmother was born there." And that's how it all started. But I didn't know if that qualified. I thought it might have to be my parents, maybe. Obviously, how the national team is now is a big sort of attraction. Anyway, it's forever growing. Jesse just gave me the call, and he probably didn't even have to say anything.
Alfie Jones, who took his citizenship oath yesterday, and will suit up for Canada tonight against Venezuela, Central Time, 6:30 kickoff.
All right, thanks a lot.
You betcha.
Scott Reguer joins us every morning with sports here on CBC's Information Radio. Still ahead in this half hour, we're going to have a conversation with AMC Grand Chief Kyra Wilson about her push for change when it comes to receiving updates about how an offender's sentence is being served and when they're released. Now, this is coming after Sean Lamb was granted statutory release last week. He was sentenced here in 2013 for the killings of 2 Indigenous women. So stay tuned. That's our feature interview ahead. But right now, it's time for your CBC Local News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is -4. Increasing clouds through the morning. That wind's going to pick up just a little bit too, south at 20, but still a warmer than seasonal mid-November day. Today's high is 4. Doctors are sick of writing sick notes, and the Manitoba government is listening. The province wants to eliminate mandatory sick notes for short-term absences from work. Those notes could only be requested after a worker has been off for 7 calendar days. A source tells CBC the government wants to introduce a bill in this session of the Legislative Assembly. The bill is expected to be teased in today's speech from the throne. Doctors Manitoba says sick notes are an unnecessary burden. Dr. Nichelle Desilets is president of Doctors Manitoba and says physicians often can't verify the illnesses.
Most of the time, people's symptoms, especially, flu-like symptoms and things like that, get the note.
Right now, Manitoba is only one of 2 provinces without rules limiting the use of sick notes. If passed, this bill would apply to public and private businesses, but not to federally regulated workplaces. A 20-year-old man in God's Lake Narrows died over the weekend after drinking a mysterious liquid, and he's not the only one. 2 boys who are 15 and 17 also drank it and were flown to hospital in Winnipeg. RCMP believe 10 others may also have consumed that liquid, but they were medically treated and released. The container it came in is being analyzed, and the person who provided it, police say, has been identified. In an email to CBC, Keewatin Tribal Council Grand Chief Walter Westesakut says a trauma team has been brought in to help community members. Westesakut says God's Lake Narrows Chief Gilbert Andrews tells him the community is in shock. Prime Minister Mark Carney's minority Liberal government is intact this morning after its first budget narrowly survived a confidence vote in the House of Commons. The document passed 170 to 168, supported by all Liberals and the lone Green Party MP Elizabeth May. 2 Conservative MPs and 2 New Democrats did not cast votes, which was key to preventing the Carney government from falling and triggering another election. You can hear the latest on this story as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. Private security guards are patrolling the streets of Steinbach. A pilot project with Steinbach Security Services has been extended by City Council. Housing developers asked the city for help dealing with theft and vandalism at construction sites. Developer Waldo Neustetter says the local RCMP doesn't have capacity to deter property crime. He says the extra help is working.
It's night and day difference. In the spring, probably late winter, spring, we had hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage and theft. And what these folks do is they come into an apartment block that we're building or a home that we're building, and they'll rip all the wire out of it.
If approved again for 2026, the private security would cost Steinbach $145,000. That is less what the city would pay for one RCMP officer. Some people in Flin Flon are still picking up the pieces after losing their cabins and homes to this summer's wildfires. One woman literally picked up the pieces and put them on display at an art gallery. CBC's Rosanna Hempel now with a story of turning grief into hope.
We felt pretty devastated.
Jan Modler's home of more than 50 years outside Flin Flon burnt down in June. But among the debris and rubble, she found some old belongings that comforted and surprised her. Things like pottery and sculptures had changed color in the heat or fused together. Some had a message that met the moment, like a now broken mug a friend gave her that said, "Ignore negativity."
We found it in the rubble. And I thought, well, that's another nice little message. The things that survive were absolutely amazing.
Now, a selection of her salvaged things are on display this month at the Northern Visual Arts Centre in Flin Flon.
Things that we found are really symbolic of part of it, I think, is resilience. Part of it is, change.
She says the exhibit is helping her grieve and process what happened. She hopes it helps others do the same. Rosanna Hempel, CBC News, Flin Flon.
A coalition of nonprofits is opposing Manitoba Hydro's request to raise rates. Hydro wants 3 annual rate increases of 3.5% starting next year. The Public Utilities Board began hearing arguments yesterday. A group called the Consumers Coalition argues those rate hikes are higher than necessary. Katrine DeLay is a lawyer representing the coalition, which includes Manitoba Harvest, the Aboriginal Centre of Winnipeg, and other groups. She says the Crown Corporation is overstating its financial needs to justify hiking rates.
Manitoba Hydro consumers have no other options. Hydro is a monopoly, and so it's even more important that Manitoba Hydro be held accountable to its customers.
In a statement, Manitoba Hydro says the proposed rate hikes would allow it to meet its mandate to provide safe, reliable, and affordable energy. You can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather Wells, thank you.
Thank you.
And now to our regional forecast on CBC. This is a time where we try to look north, south, east, and west and figure out what the weather's going to give us, Abby.
Yes, Marcy, I just looked out the window and the sun is about to make its appearance. We're going to see that sun rise in about 6-7 minutes from now in the city. -4 in Winnipeg at this time. A few clouds spotted at the Fox. Then it's going to turn mostly cloudy as you get into the day, along with some winds from the south. We warm to 4 degrees later today. Similar conditions we're seeing in the Pembina Valley region, -2. We're tracking it from northern Winkler, Altoona, all the way towards the U.S. border this morning. Partly cloudy also. More clouds rolling in with the wind shifting from the south later in the day. You also get to warm to about 4 degrees later. In the Westman region, we're tracking about 0 around Brandon at this time. Also cloudy morning with winds easing into a southerly direction, and later in the day expect a high near 4 degrees. Then it cools down to around 0 overnight. For the Parkland region, Dauphin, you're starting the day at -3. You're still at -3 since about 5 a.m. under cloud cover. There's a chance of morning flurries in that part of the province, along with a risk of freezing rain. Winds will be mild. You're going to hit highs near 3 degrees. Gimli, you are at -7 at this time. Increasing clouds also expected with winds back in from the south later in the day. Highs would get to +3. The PA, we're looking at 1 degree. Flin Flon -1 at that part of the province. We see gusty winds there. Risk of freezing drizzle coming your way this morning. Your high will only stay around 0 for today. Thompson is sitting at -8 with cloudy conditions. Periods of snow expected. Some freezing drizzle possible also. You warm up to about -3 later, and then for Churchill all the way towards the York region, we're looking at fog patches still being spotted in that part of the province, and that should lift as you get into your day with a chance of light snow around midday and a risk of some freezing drizzle also coming your way. Current temperatures, we're looking at -10 there. You warm to -5 later before cooling to -8 tonight. So slightly mild in the south, but it's cooler up north. Winnipeg right now, -4, heading to +4.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk, it's been quiet, but you have some things down on the commuter list right now.
Yes, we did get a call on the commuter line from the St. Vital Import. They said eastbound South Perimeter, just past St. Anne's, there's actually a dead deer on the road, on kind of in both lanes, right in the middle there. So heads up, you might want to slow down and just kind of sneak around it if you can. Other than that, though, that's the only thing that we've heard of so far. But if you see something going on out there, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
I had that moment yesterday where I almost hit a squirrel, and it was so stressed out. And then he was like, Mission Impossible, do. And I'm like, is he going to get through the tires? Doodaloo. And he did. He made it right through. And I looked in my rearview mirror, and there he was. I don't know how he was still standing.
It's impressive. Those little guys are fast.
I could not have navigated it. All right, it's 21 minutes to 8 o'clock. Let's build on something you might have heard in the news. Today, the provincial government will open the Manitoba Legislative Assembly with the speech from the throne. So a senior government source tells CBC it's going to talk about sick leave. Specifically in the speech that employees would only be required to provide a doctor's note after being off work for more than 7 calendar days. As you heard Heather reporting. Now, it's something that Doctors Manitoba has been advocating for. CBC's Ian Frey spoke with Doctors Manitoba President Nichelle Desilets.
Sounds fantastic to me. I haven't seen anything in writing. And of course, we want to wait and see what the government's direction is on this. But for at least a year now, we've been advocating for either restricted or ideally completely eliminated sick notes to verify illness, because it's not a productive use of an unwell patient's time who should be at home resting and recovering, nor of a physician's time, nor of the taxpayers' dollars.
If I was reading correctly, 5 or 6 notes a day, usually from a family doctor?
That is not outside of the realm of normal. We estimate that at least 600,000 sick notes are requested of the healthcare system every year in Manitoba. And what that translates to is probably about the equivalent of 300,000 appointments that are used for these purposes. And that's based on our estimate of what our members report that they are seeing in requests for sick notes, as well as how long our members report that it takes to see someone who is only requiring a sick note. And if we look at that 300,000 appointments, you could argue that that is the equivalent of adding, several dozen doctors to our workforce. And we know right now that that's the number one thing that that physicians care about, is adding more doctors to our workforce, and patients care about that too. Patients care about access to their doctor, so that number of visits is really the reason why we care about it, is that's taking time away from patients who need necessary medical care in this environment where we have a doctor shortage. After being away from work for, let's say, 1 or 2 weeks from an illness, many people need a note saying that they can go back to work. And when this is from, something like influenza, where, yeah, you might be sick for a week, but there's no, the treatments are what people naturally know they need to do. And there's not a lot of other treatments to define the timeline with. But they end up in the office asking for a note before they can go back to work.
This law might not change that last piece, no? Like if you've been gone for a week or two.
We'll see. I mean, I haven't seen anything in terms of proposed legislation. We've been advocating for all sorts of, reductions in unnecessary paperwork, and we've consulted broadly with the public, employers, HR experts, and there's a fairly good consensus that from the majority of stakeholders that these notes aren't really that useful and are not the best way of doing things. But it's culturally kind of ingrained in our workplace dynamics and in the healthcare system and in societal expectations. There are provinces across the country that have made some movement in this. So we are grateful for any small step that can help go in the right direction. Back during COVID, Public Health issued a recommendation that no employer could ask for sick note documentation for a specified amount of time, because they wanted to reduce the number of people going to a doctor or a clinic or an emergency room with symptoms to prevent spread. That was great. That was totally appropriate. It worked really well, but unfortunately we regressed after that and went back to old habits. We don't know what the government is going to be looking at what the specifics of this. We appreciate that they have looked hard at the advice and the recommendations that we've made. And you're absolutely right. It's not going to, have all the rules ingrained in it, but change can take time, especially as we navigate this, like I said, societal change and way of thinking. If Manitoba did have a ban of 7 days, that detail alone, if that is the case, it would put us from last in the country in terms of legislation around sick notes, and it would put us near the front in terms of most appropriate restrictions in terms of bans.
I think I spoke to labor and a business person, and they both credited Doctors Manitoba or advocating for this, pushing for this, getting a consensus. How does that feel?
Well, I'm excited as a family doctor and as an emergency room doctor, and I'm really excited for my patients, because a lot of patients realize that they don't really need to be in the doctor's office asking for this paperwork, and it's a burden for them too. I'm really grateful for the collaboration with the different stakeholders that have unified on these recommendations. It's allowed us to have a stronger message. It's one thing, for doctors to identify something that is could be done better, but the fact that we have stakeholders from the other side of the argument, presumably, also on board, that just shows us that we're in the right direction, and that we're asking for the right thing, and that this really is the right thing to do.
That was CBC's Ian Fraze speaking with Doctors Manitoba President Nichelle Desailly about what is expected to be in the throne speech today. A senior government source tells CBC they're going to be talking about sick leave and making a change so employees would only be required to provide a doctor's note after being off work for more than 7 calendar days. If you want to read more about the story, cbc.ca/Manitoba. If you want to hear more about the throne speech, that's later today here on CBC.
This festive season, there's one place to be with your holiday favorites on CBC. Whether you're a Grinch, hate, double hate, or full of cheer.
Nobody's walking out on this fun old-fashioned family Christmas. No, we're all in this together.
The season's best are waiting right here.
The bell still rings for me, as it does for all who truly believe.
For holiday joy from start to end. Watch free on CBC and CBC Gem.
Well, speaking of things to do over the holiday season, many of you might be planning concerts to head out and check out. And they just added one locally here. So Fontaine, local artist, is playing December 17th. The time's changed here in Winnipeg. The show that's been added, though, is on December 18th. So Fontaine's going to be on side stage. In case you've never seen Fontaine, here's a new track with some warm vibes. This is Good Buddy on 89.3 FM.
Tomorrow we'll climb up to Wycliffe. My head's a bit crazy, but I know it's fine by your side. Gentle morning mumble talking, late rainy night, cold walking. If your end in mine, it's hard to be said all the time. So cover me up, spin me around, tell me you're not gonna leave. But taking it slow, but I already know you're a good buddy to me. Swaying in your living room, you already know that I love you. Let's go where the sea meets the sky. And cover me up, spin me around, tell me you're not gonna leave. Taking it slow, but I already know you're a good buddy to me. Cover me up, spin me around, tell me you're not gonna leave. But taking it slow, but I already know you're a good buddy to me. You're a good buddy to me. You're a good buddy to me.
That is Fontaine and Good Buddy on CBC. Fontaine's going to be playing, as I mentioned, in December. So next month you can catch them at Times Changed, High Lonesome Club on Main Street at the 17th. It's a great venue to watch a show. And you can also catch Fontaine with an added show December 18th at Side Stage. Well, still ahead on the show after 8 o'clock on the program this morning, disgraced Winnipeg police officer Elston Bostock's guilty plea has raised concerns about police corruption.
What has been exposed in this particular instance is just almost a shopping list of how corruption can occur in law enforcement.
Can Manitoba learn from Norwegian police ethics? That is ahead. We're going to talk to a guest who has weighed in the past on the differences in our systems and also on the things that are the same and what we can learn from them. If you are a police officer there, by the way, one of the big differences, you are trained for 3 full years before you become an officer. And in each and every one of those years now in the courses, we understand that corruption is one of the things that they're teaching about. So that interview coming up after 8.
A teenage athlete scores a free solution to his size 23 problem. A sailor adrift at sea survives on ketchup and nets a boat. And a British Columbia couple labor to win a hotel prize. The allure of marketing freebies on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
I'm Suresh Das.
I've spent my career writing about the local favorites that make Canada's food scene truly unique. I bit into a chili. Woo! From vibrant street food to comforting traditional dishes.
The most important ingredients in jollof rice, love.
To innovative, personal twists. Butter chicken lasagna.
Butter chicken lasagna, that's what made it all happen.
I believe every bite tells a story. Now, I want to share those stories with you.
New series Locals Welcome with Suresh Das. Watch free on CBC Gem.
Time right now is 9 minutes to 8 o'clock on CBC. -4 in Winnipeg, 0 in Brandon, -8 in Thompson this morning. We are expecting to be speaking with the Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, Kyra Wilson, and we're just having some challenges reaching her. So should we be able to reach her, we will break into our programming here and we will get her on the air. But we're going to turn our attention to programming about your bottom line, because Statistics Canada's latest figures on inflation show that the rate settled down to 2.2% last month. Prices at the pump have been a big help in lowering that number. Gas was down 9.4% in October. This is something that Prime Minister Carney took credit for yesterday in the House of Commons just before the budget vote.
Mr. Speaker, today is a good day. Inflation is down 2.2%. It's for almost 2 years, it's running within the Bank of Canada's target. Mr. Speaker, today, this is a good month.
And yet, for some, it doesn't feel like a good month. Interest rates might be stabilizing, but after several years of high inflation, affordability remains a huge challenge for a lot of people in Canada, especially at the grocery store. CBC News talked with grocery shoppers in Ontario about their prices and how food costs are affecting their budgets.
Oh, the cost was $134. Oh, the grocery prices been rising a lot. And I usually spend like $80 a week, but these days I have to spend like around $200 or $300 a week. It's a lot going on these days, but it's even it's better than go to the restaurant now, because if you go to a fine dine restaurant, it costs you more too. I think so. I like vegetables, I like meat, so that's very essential for human beings. So I have to survive with this thing. So I don't go to the bar anymore. I just go to the restaurant like maybe once a month, and also I think I don't go too much online shopping these days too. Basically everything is going up, so we have to survive.
Everything's more expensive. What you used to buy like Stubby. You used to get Stubby for like $2. Now you're paying $5-6 on sale. Prime rib we used to be able to get for $5-6 a pound. Now it's $9, $10, $12, and that's on sale prices. Everything is just more expensive. We do a lot of sale shopping and a lot of stocking up and a lot of stocking for that. I'm kind of lucky I have the freezer space to do this, because if I didn't, I wouldn't know how I would be doing it. So we do have like two incomes coming into the house. But even then, with 2 kids to feed and everything else, it's astronomical.
I don't buy as many sweets or treats that I used to buy. It's more just food that is necessary to get me by. I know I have to have so much money set aside every month for my loan, my insurance, other things. And so that has to be taken care of before I do anything, before I eat. Before I pay any other bills, those main bills have to be paid first. So I've been able to manage. Luckily, I have a fairly decent job, so that helps. I don't know how these people on welfare are getting by, but because I feel I'm making a fairly good wage and I'm still struggling. So yeah, it's got to be tough out there for some people.
I feel like I used to buy a full trunk of groceries. Now $100 won't even cover a seat in my car. Sometimes it's, you decide whether a bill gets paid or if you're getting groceries, and it makes it really hard, especially when you have children. So, social activities get cut back, not traveling as far, spending less for gas, etc. Yeah, I bought maybe 3 bags of groceries the other day, and it was just under $200. I'm really hoping that something happens in the near future, because it's getting harder and harder to make ends meet and provide for your family. So hopefully our government or somebody can do something to lower the costs.
So those are some grocery shoppers in Ontario talking about inflation and how it's affecting them. And of course, we'll be talking a lot about the price of food and those that need to turn to food banks in Manitoba in just a couple of weeks. 2 weeks from Friday, Make the Season Kind is happening here on our airwaves and across all of our CBC Manitoba platforms. That's a day in partnership with Harvest Manitoba to support Harvest and all of its member agencies. And that means food banks all across the province, as well as meal programs and school programs that they still supplement with. So we'll learn more about the stories and the need locally. And how do we do that and spend the day here on the air? Well, the day is also focused on stories, but live music as well. So musicians are always grateful and willing to lend their voices and their talents to our day of programming here. So we have Make the Season Kind coming up on December the 5th. And this year, I just want to pull out one statistic because you might have missed this. This is over in Brandon. Their food banks there are experiencing huge increases in demand. So this year, one of the food banks, the largest food bank there, says they're providing about 600 more hampers this year than the same period last year. So the need in that city is growing as it is here in the city of Winnipeg. You might have heard Corey on the air yesterday. He was already down at Harvest Manitoba talking to different food bank users. And one of the things that people he met was talking about the fact that they just need a little help. They are, in fact, still working. So that stereotype, that stigma that still persists, that people are using the food bank because, they're unemployed, and they may be, and that's perfectly fine. No stigma around it. But a lot of people, in fact, are employed. They just cannot make ends meet and figure out how to cover things like rents and needs and budgets and food. So we will lean into this story in more details 2 weeks from Friday. Right now, Heather Wells is here with headlines.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba is looking to end the use of sick notes. It's something that's expected to be mentioned in today's throne speech. A government source says the NDP government wants to ban employers from demanding sick notes unless their employee has been gone from work for 7 calendar days. Private security guards are patrolling the streets of Steinbach. A pilot project with the Steinbach Security Services has been extended by City Council there. Housing developers asked for the city to help dealing with theft and vandalism at construction sites. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Nothing major developing in traffic, but if you have an update to any problems, please call Corey, 788-3093. -4 in Winnipeg now. It will be a high of 4 later with increasing cloud through the morning. Still ahead on CBC, we are going to be having an interview that follows the story of Winnipeg police officer Elston Bostock. Years of unethical and illegal behavior have been uncovered after an internal investigation exposed the actions of a disgraced Winnipeg police officer. He was an officer of 22 years in the service. He pleaded guilty to breach of trust, theft, and indignity to human remains. What can our police service learn from one a world away? We're going to take you to Norway. When it comes to corruption and ethics, they have 3 years of training, and in each and every year they look at the issue of corruption when they're training their officers. We're going to find out how, and we're going to talk to a professor with the Norwegian Police University College, who's also a former officer there, about police leadership and ethical practices. So that's ahead after 8, right here on CBC. Stay with us. World Report's next.
On cue. Robert Plant spent years as the lead singer of the legendary rock band Led Zeppelin, but after decades touring as a solo artist, he swore he would never step into a recording studio again. Now Robert Plant is back with a new album. You'll hear him talk about the band that got him back into the studio.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Canadians may know Avril Benoit as a former CBC journalist, but for 20 years she has worked at Doctors Without Borders. And as she leaves that humanitarian organization, she reflects on her time as CEO at a tumultuous moment in this world. Avril Benoit coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The Jeffrey Epstein files will be front and center today in Washington. The U.S. House of Representatives is expected to vote on the full release of the Epstein files, and it is now being backed by the U.S. president after dismissing the information in the files for months. Donald Trump says Republicans should vote in favor of making the information public. The CBC's Willie Lowry joins me now from Washington. Willie, what are we expecting today?
So we expect the House to vote in favor of compelling the Justice Department to release the Epstein files. Even though Republicans hold a slim majority, the fact that this has been a bipartisan effort led by Republican Thomas Massey and Democrat Ro Khanna suggests the numbers are there. Those two politicians are also expected to hold a press conference outside the Capitol building this morning alongside several victims of Jeffrey Epstein. President Donald Trump's reversal over the weekend, suddenly supporting the release of these files, is another indication that the House will likely vote in favor of the release. But don't expect to see the files anytime soon. This is just the first of several steps that need to take place before a release of documents.
So if it gets passed today, what's next?
It would be up to the Senate to even decide if it wants to vote on the bill. It's under no obligation, and so far Senate Majority Leader John Thune has been mum on the issue. John Barrasso, the second highest ranking Republican in the Senate, indicated that they would at least look at the bill.
The House is going to vote, try to make a decision, and we'll see if they send something to the Senate. And if they do, we'll take a look at that. But we want transparency and accountability.
If the Senate votes on the bill and it passes, it's then up to Trump to sign off on it. And then, finally, the Department of Justice would be compelled to release the files. There is another way. Trump could circumvent all these votes and simply order the Attorney General to release the documents.
Thank you, Willie.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Willie Lowry in Washington. Sweden's King Carl Gustaf and Queen Sylvia will be formally welcomed to Canada later this hour. They are leading a delegation of Swedish business leaders on a charm offensive, including representatives of Saab. It is trying to convince the Canadian government to order fewer F-35 fighter jets from the United States and instead buy its Gripen E fighter jets. Saab is promising it will create thousands of jobs in Canada. But our colleagues at Radio-Canada have learned a dozen former high-ranking officers have written a letter defending the American-made jets. Here is former Chief of the Defense Staff, Tom Lawson.
There just is nothing available in the free world that comes close to the quality of the F-35. The F-35 is the only aircraft that provides a way ahead with the operational capabilities that will make it viable for decades to come.
The letter has not been made public yet, and Lawson would not confirm reports that say he signed it. But it was apparently sent to key decision makers yesterday, including Prime Minister Mark Carney. Canadians will not be going into another election. Prime Minister Mark Carney's minority Liberals will continue to govern. Their budget passed the House of Commons, but it required a handful of abstentions from some key NDP and Conservative MPs. Janice McGregor is in our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, the Liberals live to fight another day. What now?
Marcia, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne is out immediately today with his next flex. The legislation to actually implement the measures in this budget has been put on notice, meaning we'll soon get to tuck into its actual policy and monetary substance, something that's been, frankly, somewhat overshadowed. Now, that legislation means more confidence votes. But the way this first stare down ended could be instructive because multiple parties blinked here. 2 weeks ago, Elizabeth May was theatrically throwing her budget book onto the floor to denounce its climate measures. By yesterday, a few words of assurance from the Prime Minister in question period, enough for her to vote in favor. And both the New Democrats and the Conservatives held back, with two MPs abstaining. That means neither can blame the other for propping up the government. Anyone that's watching only Pierre Poilievre's social media saw no acknowledgement of this in his messages to his followers about why most Conservatives voted no on a budget that they insist remains unaffordable. But what opposition parties also couldn't afford was another election.
What does the way this unfolded tell you about how things will play out in the House between now and the winter break?
Well, today, for example, the House of Commons is debating bail reform legislation. These are changes premiers, mayors, as well as the opposition have all demanded. The opposition has a competing private members' bill of its own that calls for similar action. After enabling the Liberals to keep governing, is there an openness, at least on this bill, for a compromise to deal with what's a shared public safety concern if we aren't going to plunge into another election? Will MPs use this time to make progress, or are bad feelings running too hot to collaborate just now?
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. The United Nations Security Council is backing Donald Trump's plan for Gaza. The blueprint put forward by the U.S. president paves the way for a possible sovereign Palestinian state and an international stabilization force. But as the CBC's Tom Perry reports, both Israel and Hamas are already raising objections.
The draft resolution has been adopted.
The UN Security Council endorsed Donald Trump's plan for Gaza, with America's two main rivals, Russia and China, abstaining. Mike Waltz, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, called the vote a significant step toward a peaceful and prosperous Gaza.
This resolution today is just the beginning. An adoption of resolution today demonstrates the overwhelming support for the president's vision.
But critics say that vision is unclear. Both Russia and China have pointed out there remain big questions around Trump's plan for a board of peace, with him as chair, to oversee a transitional government in Gaza, and around Trump's proposal for an international stabilization force to work with Palestinian police to provide security in the territory. Hamas, which still controls Gaza, is supposed to disarm under the peace plan and play no role in any future government. The group has rejected the UN resolution and its calls for an international force to patrol the territory. Israel, meanwhile, has raised concerns about the resolution's mention of a potential pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood. With Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu repeating his government's position, it stands firmly against any plan to establish a Palestinian state. Tom Perry, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Japan is warning its citizens in China to be cautious and avoid crowded places. The rift between the two countries continues to grow. That is after Japan's prime minister suggested a Chinese attack on Taiwan could trigger a military response from Tokyo. A Chinese diplomat responded with a threat. The Japanese embassy is telling its citizens to be careful of their interactions with Chinese people. It is also urging them not to travel alone. It may not be winter yet, but snowbird season is beginning. This is the time of year many Canadians consider heading south of the border to escape the cold. But as Julia Wong reports, it appears fewer people are making the trip this year.
It was just gorgeous. I just loved to see the boats, and it was just a beautiful lifestyle.
For 10 years, retiree Joanne Rowe spent her winters in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. But after tariff tensions and annexation threats from U.S. President Donald Trump,
that's when I thought, I'm getting out of here.
This year, she will go to Mexico instead. Canadian snowbirds normally flock to the Sunshine State, but the most recent Florida tourism figures show a 20% drop from the same time last year, ruffling feathers over how the lucrative snowbird season will go.
We really, really welcome the Canadians back with open arms. We want them back.
At the Beachside Atlantic Hotel and Spa, sales director Amy Faulkner laments their loss. Canadian occupancy at the hotel is down 5% since the start of 2025, hurting the hotel's bottom line.
Because they spend money when they come here, especially in a hotel, room service, dining on the beach, and all of that adds up very quickly, and we miss it so very much.
That sentiment echoed by Hollywood, Florida Mayor Josh Levy, who says more than 500,000 jobs in the state depend on Canadian snowbirds.
We see our Canadian visitors at our grocery stores and in restaurants and just contributing to the local economy. So
an economic relationship the mayor and Florida businesses hope withstand the prevailing winds of politics. Julia Wong, CBC News, Hollywood, Florida.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, not a bad start to our Tuesday morning here in downtown Winnipeg, at least. Thanks for joining us. I'm Marcy Marcusa. That's where we're sitting in our CBC studios on 89.3 FM. This is Information Radio on CBC. It is -3 in the city of Winnipeg. We're getting actually even a peak of sun. That might go away. Abby's going to have the forecast in a moment. This half hour on the show, we're going to be talking about what we can learn from Norway and whether or not Manitoba can take a lesson from Norwegian police when it comes to corruption and ethics. We have a conversation with a former professor and a former officer. He's now a former professor with the Norwegian Police University College about police leadership and ethical practices. And in Norway, police train for 3 years before they're on the job, and corruption has factored into a lot of those lessons that they take each and every year. So how? And should we change some of the training here? We'll find out. First, Heather Wells is in with updates on other news stories. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, doctors are sick of writing sick notes, and the Manitoba government is listening. The province wants to eliminate mandatory sick notes for short-term absences from work. It could only be requested after a worker has been off for 7 calendar days. A source tells CBC the government's going to tease a new bill in today's throne speech. Trauma counselors are heading to God's Lake Narrows as that community grapples with a fatal incident over the weekend. A 20-year-old man died early Sunday after drinking a mysterious liquid. 2 boys, 15 and 17, who also drank it, were flown to hospital in Winnipeg. RCMP believes 10 others may also have consumed that substance. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Abby.
Well, Marcy, I'll tell you, it's more like a chilly, cloud-filled day across board that I track this morning. However, downtown, we're seeing just the sun break through those blue skies we have there. However, it's going to be more like a condition where the clouds are going to roll in later in the day. Most regions in the south warming slightly above freezing, while north remains colder with, that risk of freezing rain or drizzle is something to watch out for across from, tracking it from Dauphin, the powerful influence Thompson Churchill regions. Expect freezing drizzle to come your way today. Winnipeg, -3 at this time through the day. We're going to see clouds build. Soft southerly breeze and temperatures will climb to +4 later before dipping to 1 overnight. So enjoy the mild day.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Traffic, Corey, what do you know?
Just got a text from my sister-in-law, Hannah. She said that she was saying, "Hey, Corey, what's going on?" Northbound Pembina backed up from Stafford all the way to Confusion Corner. Couldn't tell me why, and I don't know why either. So if you know what's going on, you can give me a call. I would love to hear more what's causing that. We also heard from the St. Vital Import eastbound South Perimeter that there is a dead deer kind of right in the boat, blocking kind of both lanes there. I think you can still kind of get around, but you might want to slow down. So careful there. If you that's eastbound South Perimeter just past St. Anne's. If you see something else going on, though, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, if you've been following the news, then you know that an internal investigation has exposed the actions of disgraced Winnipeg police officer Elston Bostock, uncovering years of unethical and illegal behavior. Bostock is an officer of 22 years on the force locally. He pleaded guilty to breach of trust, theft, and indignity to human remains. He admitted to stealing drugs from a crime scene, to bribing officers to fix traffic tickets. He took a photograph of a topless dead woman and then shared the picture with fellow officers. While Bostock still faces other charges, his guilty plea has put a spotlight on the Winnipeg Police Service and asks how many officers took bribes from Bostock over the years, and how many other Winnipeg police officers looked the other way and didn't turn him in sooner. Zane Tesler, former civilian director of the Independent Investigation Unit of Manitoba, the IIU, was talking about this with guest host Marjorie Dowhouse on Up to Speed recently.
What has been exposed in this particular instance is just almost a shopping list of how corruption can occur in law enforcement. You have almost every single example of corruption. I think at the very least, one would expect that police officers who are sworn to enforce laws, to maintain public safety, to build community trust would take the highest road possible to ensure that the actions of themselves and their compatriots is above reproach. I think what caught my eye is the fact that other officers were so easily persuaded to violate their own oath, to cancel tickets and do other things for $20 coffee cards. I mean, it's ridiculous just how cheap justice can be taken at times, or the lack of justice can be bought in this regard. So the level of corruption goes beyond the main officer who's at the top of the hill, but as you go down the different layers and strata, corruption just pervades a number of officers, and its effects will be long-standing for some time to come.
Rune Glomset is an associate professor emeritus with the Norwegian Police University College. She's a former officer as well and author of Police Leadership, a Norwegian Approach. He joins us via Zoom to weigh in on this as he's weighed in on the past on the service. And so he has some understanding as well of his police service and ours here. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So what do you think about the Bostock case in so much as what you've heard, and also what Tesler had to say just now about corruption?
I agree that this is a menu of typical police corruptions. And I also agree on his way of saying it. One person is an example, but what about the others? That is my foremost thoughts now.
How are Norwegian officers taught about corruption when they go to university? Because one of the reasons you were on the show before, you and I were talking about how much training officers where you live get, which is drastically different from how long officers are trained here. We're talking some months versus years and years. So what is the actual training around corruption in Norway?
Well, I will go back to my own training in 1982 and 83. We had training in ethical behavior and integrity during the training. It was case studies and discussions. Now it is much more professionalized, and they have it as a team going through the whole education of 3 years. So it's a very, very substantial part of the police education and the training. And also, when they are out in practice, they regularly discuss ethical problems, ethical dilemmas concerning the police role and the police practice.
Is there a similar case involving an officer around corruption in Norway when you're hearing about the case here in Winnipeg?
I've been looking back now, and there is one main case from 2014. It was a police officer, a very well-known, experienced police officers. He was called, the case is called the Kaplan Jensen case. And the police officer, Eirik Jensen, was arrested in 2014 and charged with gross corruption and involvement in large-scale drug trafficking. And he was sentenced to 21 years in prison, and of course losing his role as a police officer. This is the most important and the biggest case in Norway last years. So it went up to the Supreme Court, and then in November 2020, they made the conviction legally binding. So this is a very spectacular case, and it very much discussed in Norway. And we also have a lot of allegations. People who are in contact with the police, they are reporting police officers for corruption. And then there is a special agency without the police who are looking after the police, and they have regularly found that there is no corruption. But the case from 2014 is a very high-profile case, and we also have 2 cases from 2011.
When you spoke about how officers where you are trained, during their time around corruption and how it's personalized now and it's all the way thread through 3 years and different aspect of the training for officers, you talked about ethics when it comes to corruption. But are officers trained to resist and report corruption? Is that how does that factor in?
Yes, this is, they are also trained to do that, to report it, and it is a special channel to do it within the police and also outside the police. So also the trade union, the police trade union, has been very much in front of this this thing. So of course the police has a very loyal culture, and it is some kind of barrier from one person to go to report another one, but that happens, and it's very important, of course, that people within the police can report improper practice and unlawful practice.
When that happens, how is a reporting misconduct, if an officer does so, facilitated for a police officer in Norway?
One can report it to a special organization, or you can report it within the police district, and then it is up to the chief of police to decide if this is going to the special organization, or say no, this is nothing that we shall follow up.
What advice might you have for the Winnipeg Police Service here where I live going forward, now that these actions have been exposed, about moving forward and regaining the trust of the public and also changing the service?
I think I could give 2 advices. One is putting ethics and ethical behavior and integrity and professional integrity in policing as an important theme in the education and training of police officers. The second one is that every police district should have this on the agenda, put this on the agenda and discuss cases, dilemmas, and so on, and put it like near to the profession. That is the best 2 advices I can give.
Thank you very much for your insight. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Rune Glomset is an associate professor emeritus with the Norwegian Police University College. He's also a former police officer and the author of Police Leadership, a Norwegian Approach. I spoke with him yesterday via Zoom.
The Canadian Music Hall of Fame, honoring Canada's most influential music legends. Join 8-time Juno Award winner Paul Brandt as he welcomes the 2025 inductees: Dan Hill, Jeanette Renaud, Glass Tiger, and Lorena McKenna, including special tributes to Sum 41 and Maestro Fresh Wes, and a special video appearance by Celine Dion. The 2025 Canadian Music Hall of Fame ceremony premieres on October 23rd, free on CBC Jam.
Well, next a bit of music from someone who was put into that Canadian Music Hall of Fame back in 2003. Here's Lynn Lake, Manitoba's own Tom Cochrane and Boy Inside the Man.
We had dreams without the love we were fighting for. There's something holy, something more. When I turned 21, we were outside on the run. When I walked out with my girl, hey, we were halfway around the world. Right around the world. And I dreamed that I saw her standing there. They're running for the bullets at the man. I was hit hard by the light so bright it burned. And all at once I knew she'd understand. Understand. Boy inside the man. The boy inside the man. When I burned 25, we were hungry, we had dry. Then I turned much bolder then. Ah, 'cause the boy was lost in pride. Now I just turned 31. And I have lost and I have won. Still I keep my dreams alive. Ah, 'cause the boy will never die. Never die. And I dreamed that I saw her standing there. They're running for the boy inside the man. I was hit hard by the light so bright it burned. And all at once I knew she'd understand. Understand. The boy inside the man. The boy inside the man. Ah, do you understand? Dreamed that I saw her standing there. They're running for the boy inside the man. I was hit hard by the light so bright it burned. And all at once I knew she'd understand. Understand. And I dreamed that I saw her standing there. They're running for the boy inside the man.
Tom Cochrane and Boy Inside the Man. Tom Cochrane and Red Rider. Well-known tune by a real artist, like a real person, which leads us to invite Marjorie Dowhouse to the airwaves to talk about what their call-in is on Radio Noon today, which is not about real people, but it's about music.
It's about AI. Recently, I don't know if you've heard the song. I had a chance to listen to the song. I think you had it in one of your business
Yeah, we had a
reports,
clip
Lauren.
yesterday.
Yeah.
This is this not real person who's making waves and now recorded a tune.
Yep. The first song completely done by AI that's made the Billboard charts. So today we're asking you, and AI is such a talker. I feel like a lot of people have a lot to say about this. Would you watch, listen to, take in any content that is strictly AI generated? So give us a call after 12:30 and share your thoughts on whether or not you'd consume content generated by AI.
And we're talking about Zanaya Monet, by the way.
Yes.
This is this artist, the AI artist that's affecting all kinds of conversations today. So join the one on Radio Noon, the call-in. Thanks, Marge.
Thanks, Marcy.
Between 12:30 and 1 o'clock. And if you want to weigh in now on that topic, you can always call their listener line, which is 788-3797. It is coming up to news time here at 8:30, and I want to thank the people that work hard on our programs day in and day out. And for today's show, contributors were associate producers May McKillop, Jenna Bedosso, our community reporter in our current affairs unit here at CBC Manitoba, Shannalee Vidal, and also associate producer and reporter Zubina Ahmed. Want to give thanks also to our news department, Heather Wells, who we'll hear from again at 8:30 here, but Heather Wells and Megan Ketchison and Joni Nicolo, who are always here and always helping us with all kinds of on the fly and on editorial decisions. So all together, one big team. Thank you, guys. A big thanks to our producers. Leif Larson is a senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba, and to the show's producer, Nellie Gonzalez, who produces the morning show, also Radio Noon, up to speed as well. And thanks to a couple of other folks that obviously are critical, and that is our Studio 15 live team, Corey Funk and Abby Adiyemi, as well as Darren Marash, and today Sophia Peralta-Baron. So thank you, everyone, for your work on Information Radio and on the morning show. Appreciate you. And I know that all of you listening do as well. Remember, if you have any feedback, give us a call, 788-3205. And also the drive. You can also update anything if there's a problem to the 8:30 hour here that continues. And that number is 788-3093. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. Partly cloudy, -3 right now. We're going to see more clouds move in and that southerly breeze pick up just a bit by noon today. A high of 4. Manitoba is looking to end the use of sick notes for short-term absences from work. Right now, there is no provincial law, but a government source says the NDP government wants to change that. The province wants to ban employers from demanding sick notes unless their employee has been gone from work for 7 calendar days. Doctors Manitoba is thrilled with the plan. President Dr. Nichelle Desolé says sick notes are a waste of time that a physician could better spend on a legitimate medical concern.
The vast majority of these illnesses are not verifiable. If someone comes to the clinic and tells me that they've been unwell with a gastrointestinal illness, I have no way of confirming that outside of observation.
The proposed legislation is expected to be mentioned in today's throne speech, laying out the government's priorities for this new session. If passed, this bill would apply to public and private businesses, but not federally regulated workplaces. Trauma counselors are heading to God's Lake Narrows as that community grapples with the weekend death of a young man. The 20-year-old died after drinking a mysterious liquid. 2 boys, 15 and 17, who also drank it, were flown to hospital in Winnipeg. RCMP believe 10 others may also have consumed the substance, but they were medically treated and released. The container the substance came in is being analyzed, and police say the person who provided it has been identified. A private security firm is working with RCMP in Steinbach to fight property crime at construction sites. It's part of a pilot project by Steinbach City Council. The pilot was recently extended after developers in the area say the overnight security patrols are working. Brian Brunel owns Steinbach Security Services. He says his mobile units allow police to focus on more serious crimes.
When there's an assault taking place or murders taking place or stuff where they really need to be addressing to, or creating their general investigative section again and getting enough members for that. That's what they need to focus on, and that's what I'm sure they really want to do, where we can actually help them out in other areas where it's not so many hours for the police officers.
Steinbach City Council is paying $360 a night for the private patrols. The current contract has been extended to the end of this year. A coalition of nonprofits is opposing Manitoba Hydro's request to raise rates. Hydro wants 3 annual rate increases of 3.5% starting next year. The Public Utilities Board began hearing arguments yesterday. A group called the Consumers Coalition argues the rate hikes are higher than necessary. Katrine DeLay is a lawyer representing the coalition, which includes Manitoba Harvest, the Aboriginal Centre of Winnipeg, and other groups. She says the Crown Corporation is overstating its financial needs to justify hiking rates.
Manitoba Hydro consumers have no other options. Hydro is a monopoly, and so it's even more important that Manitoba Hydro be held accountable to its customers.
In a statement, Manitoba Hydro says the proposed rate hikes would allow it to meet its mandate to provide safe, reliable, and affordable energy. Prime Minister Mark Carney's heading to the UAE today before traveling to Johannesburg for the G20 summit. His trip comes as his minority government narrowly survived a crucial budget vote yesterday, passing 170 to 168. 4 MPs abstained, while Green Party leader Elizabeth May backed the budget after Carney assured her he remains committed to Canada's Paris climate targets. A Flin Flon woman who lost her home outside that city to wildfires this summer is channeling her grief into art. Jan Modler lived on Birch Lake, just across the border in Saskatchewan, for more than 50 years. After it burned down in June, she found some old belongings in the rubble. Things like glass, pottery, and sculpture had broken or changed color. Others fused together. She found them beautiful and interesting, and so decided to showcase them at the local art gallery.
Those kinds of things, I think, helped us, look at the brighter side of this. Things change, things pass, and, sometimes you have to let go of that. And the whole show, I think, has really helped with that kind of transition.
Modler hopes it helps others reflect and also see the brighter side. You can find more on our website, and you can even see some photos of that art. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Let's look at the commute this morning, Corey.
Yes, hearing about very, very slow traffic northbound Pembina, pretty much right from Confusion Corner all the way up to Stafford. So maybe not sure why, but maybe very slow going there for you this morning. Also, eastbound South Perimeter, just past St. Anne's, we heard that there was a dead deer on the road. That's kind of not blocking, but right on both lanes there. So you may want to slow down to get around that. Other than that, a fairly smooth commute overall this morning.
All right, thanks, Cor.
Thank you.
Abby?
Most of the regions in the south, few degrees below zero this morning. Then we'll see that temperature climb to the plus range. We're talking about +4 in most regions down south. While up north, we're going to see highs range from -3 to 0 in most of the regions. Winnipeg right now, we are at 3 degrees, warming up to 4.
You have visitors in the control room.
I got visitors
We're
all the
hearing
time.
hellos.
Hello.
End of the show, and we open the doors and we say hello to friends and goodbye to you, Manitoba. Thank you for listening and for watching CBC Information Radio. This is the morning show live from Studio 15. I'm Marcy Marcusa. The throne speech later today, of course, we'll have full coverage and analysis. Tomorrow morning, Wab Kinew will be here, the Premier of Manitoba, for a live interview after the throne speech, but it's also our regular monthly interview with him. So we hope you tune in. Take care, be well. The Current's coming up next right here on 89.3 FM.